Good afternoon and welcome to the joint meeting of the Town of Chatham Board of Selectmen, the Board of Health, and the Park and Recreation Commission. It's May 27th. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone is recording the meeting, please notify me. I also ask you at this time that you mute your computer device or phone. And then you'll be able to unmute if you're called on to speak or need to speak. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 23rd, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham Board of Selectmen, Board of Health, and Park and Recreation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, and the conference ID number is 270-235-710, followed by the pound sign. Or you may join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted meeting agenda on our website. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. So to get going, we have no meeting minutes to approve this week. We had a somewhat shortened week from last week. We're meeting now in our new time slot, which is Tuesdays at 6 p.m. and starting next week. But this week we felt it necessary to have a meeting this week. So I just want to say that as we get going on the public announcements and agenda item requests, if anybody has not yet or did not participate in the virtual Memorial Day ceremony, do so by tuning into Channel 18 or YouTube Channel 18. It was a wonderful event. Not as good as it would have been in person, but it was beautifully orchestrated by our team that put it together, which was Ryan and Channel 18, Mark, Town Manager Goldsmith, and some other staff people, which she probably would acknowledge. And then the ceremonies committee, Robert Franz helped as well. Jill, was there anybody else that worked on the project together with you?
I think all town departments and the scouts having that unified Pledge of Allegiance, I thought was really special. And that was the good work of Channel 18, as well as Shauna helping with that too.
Yes, and thank you very much for mentioning that. The other thing is I just wanted to mention to everybody that you should go to the town clerk's page. The early ballot and absentee ballot applications are online, and you can fill those out now and send them in, as well as the town census. It's really important that we all fill out the town census. It's important to us being recognized for the people that live here, the demographics, and in order for us to get good funding for projects, it would be most helpful. Saying all that, just as a note internally to my board, the Cape and Islands Selectmen's Association will be probably conducting, we're setting an agenda to meet on Monday, this Monday, June 1st at 7:30 a.m. We're sort of pooling the group for different conversations around what all the towns are working on in response to COVID-19 and what some of our stresses are and our needs may be for going forward, that we may be able to collectively call on the state to assist with our municipalities' needs. But we can talk about that at that meeting. So just to get started, does anybody, I just want to go down one more item about the protocol for participation, since there might be some new folks on tonight. During the meeting, I will the first thing that will happen is the materials will be presented, materials or reports. Then I will call on comments and questions for the board. We'll have a request for the members of the public who wish to comment or ask questions to identify themselves. And then we'll call on those who have identified themselves in that order. One thing I forgot to do is call the roll of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health and the Park and Rec Commission. So I think we should do that before we go any further. So I will pull my board and then turn it over to Board of Health and then to Park and Rec. Selectman Kokolas.
Here.
Selectman Nicastro.
Present.
Selectman Metters.
Here.
And Selectman Dykens.
Present.
And I'm present. Okay. John, do you want to, Board of Health, do you want to pull your membership, please?
Certainly, thank you. I'd like to call roll for the Board of Health members now. Dr. Alan Ward, are you on the call?
Present.
Dr. Noble Hanson, are you on the call?
Yes.
Ron Broman, are you on the call? Ed Sheehan, I heard you before, so I'm going to assume you're still on the call.
Yes.
Thank you. Ron Broman, last chance. Okay, Shireen, we have 4 Board of Health members on the call. That does equal a quorum.
Thank you. I'm going to ask whoever doesn't have their phone muted right now. We're getting a little bit of feedback, so please mute your phone. Chairman Fry, we're going to call on you to pull your commission. So if you'd like to do that now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Meredith Fry, Chair, Parks and Rec. Commissioner Robbins. I see her name up.
I just unmuted. I'm here.
Okay. Commissioner Selden. Ira.
Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Eldridge, Dave Eldridge.
I'm here.
And I know Dave Malles is not available. So there's 4 of us.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So going back to public announcements and agenda item requests. Peter, do you have, Kokolas, do you have anything that you'd wish to add or say?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Dean, any?
I would just reemphasize that the election ballots are available on request. I know you mentioned that, but I think we couldn't hear you for part of that announcement.
Okay.
So just contact the town clerk for an early ballot or an absentee ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Selectman Metters.
Yes, Madam Chair. I know next week we are going to be discussing the roles of regulatory non-regulatory committees, but specifically, I've talked to the chair of the Independence Day Parade Committee. Understands the the decisions that were made recently concerning the parade, but would very much like to be able to meet with the group to discuss with them his desire to put a virtual July 4th parade, Independence Day parade, together this year, if the group would be amenable, and he feels that it would take very little staff resources to do so. So whatever we can do to allow that conversation to happen in a timely manner would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. Okay. Jeff, anything from you tonight?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Anything, I'll accept people from the remote participants. Anybody would like to make a public announcement or agenda item request, just tell me who you are and I'll call back on you.
Madam Chair, Alex Halala, Finance Director.
Okay, anybody else? Well, Alex, then why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone who's watching that tax bills are due on Monday, June 1st. As you might recall, the board to take advantage of the governor's legislation to extend the due date from May 1st to June 1st, but June 1st is next Monday. So I just want to remind everyone that tax bills are due. Either pay online, ACH is free of charge. You can use a credit card for a 2.9% surcharge, send in a check via snail mail, or you can drop it off at the box at Town Hall, right outside the side entrance door. So there's a drop box there. If you need to make arrangements, please contact the treasurer's office. The information is on the website.
Thank you, Alex. Anybody else would like to make an agenda item request or? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to new business. Thank you, everyone. Our first order of business is the West Chatham roadway project update. MassDOT request to consider allowing utility relocations to continue during the summer shutdown through to June 30th, 2020. And so we have the Director of Public Works, Tom Temple, is on the line. I'm seeing if wrong agenda item. Hi, Jill. I'm looking at the staff reports and not looking at my agenda. Sorry about that. We're going to curtail you for a second, Tom. And we're going to talk about the annual town meeting, June 22nd, 2020. We have a location update and some information from Jill. Go ahead, Jill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So since the board last talked about the warrant, we had to do a change of location, and we had originally set the warrant for the Monomoy Regional Middle School. When we were looking through the logistics of it and holding it inside and how to hold it inside using many of the rooms, including some difficulties with getting a contractor for the audio and visual equipment, the staff and I had thought that we should look at an outside venue. And I know the board had talked informally about Veterans Field, and in looking at many other options, it seems that that will be the best option for us. So for the warrant that is available on the town's website and will be posted this week, the location is noted as Veterans Field. And the warrant cover, as you might have seen earlier today, it specifically notes that it's an outdoor assembly and it's still at 6 p.m. And so prepare for variable conditions and COVID-19 safety protocols, and a potential rain date on June 23rd with more event logistics forthcoming. I spoke with the moderator about this, and if he's able to have a consent calendar, we realistically could get through the warrant and town meeting fairly quickly. I don't want to deprive anyone of the right to vote or deliberate, but I think it could be almost in just an hour. So probably a little longer to check people in and work out how we're going to get people inside, any kind of ADA and handicap accessibility accommodations. But this was the one location that we can tap into power and also use the PA, the public announcement system there at Veterans Field. So it's going to be one of those old hear ye things, and low or no tech. And hopefully the warrant information and the information in the warrant provides enough information for people to be able to vote. So I wanted to ask the board if you could endorse it. It was a last minute decision. We had to make the call by Friday morning to get it to the printer so that it's in everybody's mailboxes 14 days before town meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Jill. Any questions from my board? Peter, any questions? Peter Kokolas.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I click on it and it doesn't go right away. Anyway, yeah, I understand. My first concern when I saw that, and I remember reading an email from the moderator, is logistics and how you're going to handle it. I realize 6 o'clock, it's still light out. You probably have to rope everything off. I don't know. This doesn't preclude us from moving it again, given any kind of issue, but I'm struggling with myself about it, and I agree that you probably have a tougher time trying to put it inside a building than you do outside. But I get it when we can use the sound system that's there. How are people going to talk to us? I imagine we're going to have mics or something for them if they want to make comments. I don't know. Obviously, it's completely different, and I'm arguing with myself in a number of ways, but I can't think of another option. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Yeah, Madam Chair, there will be microphones there. There's electricity, which makes the site a lot easier than using the upper field behind the Monomoy Regional Middle School gym. And there's also lights too. We have access to those lights. We could probably turn them on earlier, but that's getting close to the longest day of the year. So we should be able to conduct business. It's just, there is some risk with the weather. It just provides for probably a safer condition as it relates to social distancing. I think we can spread people out. People should wear masks and so forth. It's just, we're going to have to make an extreme effort so that those with any kind of limitations, physical limitations, can still participate, as well as those with any maybe audio or hearing issues can also hear the meeting going on. But I expect the moderator will be up in the broadcaster's booth, and we'll be able to convene the meeting pretty efficiently.
Okay. Any other questions, Peter, for Jill? Okay. Jean, do you have any questions or comments about this matter?
Thank you, Shireen. Just a couple. I had spoken with the town moderator. He told me a couple of weeks ago. I think the idea of holding it at Veterans Field was originally his suggestion. I think it's a good one. I would point out that we're not the only town on the Cape having a town meeting that week. The town of Orleans is having a meeting on the 25th. Harwich, I think, was scheduled for the 22nd, but I read today where they're deferring their annual town meeting until the fall. The town of Dennis is on the 23rd. And under the emergency laws that were passed, the town moderator has the authority to postpone the date of town meeting for up to 30 days at a time, as long as the governor's emergency order is in effect. So there is that safety valve there. We've put together a proposed budget, and we have a couple of financial articles we think are important. And I think the focus is going to be on those articles. There are a bunch of petition articles, which hopefully no one is going to want to discuss, including the senior center. Those will all be put off to the special town meeting on September the 19th, which we've called. So I think this meeting Jill said an hour plus. I don't, other than the logistics piece, I think the deliberations probably should take no more than 20 minutes. In any event, I think it's the right course of action. So I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Corey, do you have any comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. Clearly, this is not the ideal scenario for our annual town meeting or a town meeting of any sort. I do think it is going to be the best option for us. The logistics of making it outside are manageable. The fact that the weather can change, that's why we all live on New England. We're hardy New Englanders. We can deal with the weather changing. I'm not concerned about that at all. We've, philosophically, we've said, okay, this is our core business that we need to take care of. Items that are more controversial or that we expect debate on, we are clearly saying we want to deal with this in the fall. Senior center, the petition articles, there's the mechanics involved that hopefully no one will move them, but we anticipate we'll be addressing all that in the fall. So we can take care of our core business, make our plans as best as possible. I will support this. I mean, the articles have been vetted by the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee. I don't have an issue with what we are presenting for the June meeting, and I will support this.
Okay. All right, Jeff, how about you?
Yeah, I'm supportive as well. I suggest that we kind of focus on that parking lot by the Red Nun for those that are handicapped or have difficulty with mobility, because it's flatter there and they can more easily access Veterans Field from that side of the field. I think it's a good idea. I think it would be ultimately an historic event if we actually pull it off. I think it's going to be kind of fun. It's the second longest day of the year, and we have a really short warrant purposefully that we spent some time thinking about. So I'm fully in favor. So let's do it. We have a rain date. If that doesn't happen, then the moderator, if the emergency order is still in place, can do something else. So anyway, let's go.
Great. I agree. I'm not going to reiterate everything that everybody said, but I am looking for, I think we do or should have a motion and a vote to endorse the location, just as a matter of principle to the process. Sorry, my earbud's falling down.
So moved, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Can I have a second?
Second it, Madam Chair.
Perfect. All right. Any further discussion from the board? Any remote participants? Any comments or questions from remote participants?
Shireen, this is John Beckley.
Hi, John, go ahead.
Hi, I would hope that we insist that people wear masks after they get out of their cars, and that we employ both the mask wearing as a mandatory requirement, except if they have, a medical condition, plus the 6-foot social distancing. So we have a two-tiered way to keep all the participants safe.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you, John. Do I hear anybody else that would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, I will take a vote on this issue. Peter?
Aye.
Dean?
Madam Chair, I'm assuming the vote is purely the motion, not on the issue of masks.
No, it's not an issue on the mask. I'm sorry, to clarify, it's the motion to endorse town meeting at Veterans Field.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Corey Metters?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. As a matter of clarification, Dean, I think we can leave it up to staff to put together the protocol. And I'm sure that John, committee, they will weigh in on it.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate what the Chairman Beckley has said. I'm not sure I fully agree with a mandate, but I think we should strongly encourage people to wear masks. Certainly we should socially distant, but we can leave it to the town manager working with the staff going forward. And if it needs to come back to us or to the Board of Health, they could weigh in.
Right, okay. Well, this is the first initial conversation we're actually having about it. So I think when the planning will go on for the next couple of weeks, we'll be getting an update, correct, Jill? And we'll be able to weigh in on matters if they come up that we need to. Okay.
Yes, and the health agent and Dr. Bob are involved in these discussions as well, and will be, so including the police and fire chiefs.
Great. Is that satisfactory, Dean, for you?
Yes, yeah. And
Okay.
I'm not necessarily against what John said. I just think it needs to be studied a little bit more. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to move on to our next item, which is the West Chatham roadway project update. MassDOT request to consider allowing utility relocations to continue during the summer shutdown through June 30th, 2020. And we have DPW Director Temple, who's making a presentation tonight. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the rest of the board members. I've been
Madam Chair, I'm going to recuse myself. This is Jeff Dykens. Thank you.
Okay, it's noted.
I've been in contact with Mass DOT, Ngrid, as well as Verizon, as well as the general contractor, Lawrence Lynch, for this project. Currently, right now, the gas company is ahead of schedule from what I originally had sent for the packet for your agenda package, for the agenda report. There is approximately 11 services remaining. All the side piping for all the roadway connections have been completed and brought to the existing other pipes where they will make the physical connection. They're intending on gassing up with the permission of the Board of Selectmen. They're intending on gassing the lines up tomorrow if they get the approvals, which means that once they gas the lines, they can start doing the services and then the side street connections. As you drive down the construction site, you'll see that the new trenches that were paved out there, where they left off the pipe, and they're right adjacent to make the physical connections. The 11 services that are in question, there's 2 residential service connections that are needed. The rest are commercial or business. So that's 9 commercial or businesses that need to be done. Their intent is to start on the north side, on the south side, which is the shorter side. The gas main is in the breakdown lane, or the just beyond the fog line, if you will. What they're doing, because of the governor's order, their company had policy put in place for Ngrid where they're not allowed to go into customers' houses unless there's an emergency. They're planning on, with the governor's next phase, they're planning on June 8th lifting their policy currently to be able to start going in and activating all different services throughout the state. So with that said, what their intent is to start on Friday, after the lines are gassed up on Thursday, start bringing all the services to beyond the limit of the back of sidewalk areas. Their surveyor was out there today marking out the limits of the gas extensions for each one of those services on both sides of the road for the 11 services in question. Once they bring those to the, and they get the okay to go in on June 8th, they would start making the physical connections at that point as they move through the rest of the project. I anticipate that the services itself, while they say it's 11 days, if they're allowed to start on the actual lighting of the pilots on the 8th, you might see that number reduced even further, so it would be less than the 11 days. The side street connections, once these are fully gassed up, that is the actual physical connection to the side streets. That might take probably another 4 days because of the 6 streets that are involved. So you're really talking about the week of the 17th, being completed, or the 19th of June for the gas company, which is ahead of the schedule that I had originally anticipated. It was good news that we heard that they were looking to allow the gas company to get in on the 8th. That's a huge plus for the town of Chatham. Verizon is right on schedule, and if you drive by there and you see them out there working, they're on the breakdown lane side, closer to the property side. So you have 3 lanes of traffic that are currently able to go into the center lane to make a left or a right turn lane. It's not impacting the traffic at all for finishing up the Eversource work that's needed, or the Verizon work that's needed out there. That's really it where they're at as far as the construction and completion. I have not physically reached out to the residents because I wasn't sure the direction that the Board of Selectmen wanted to take with this. When talking with the state, knowing that we had a short window of opportunity, and if we do get hit with a second round of COVID-19 in the fall or early late summer, this could be problematic for the delay of the construction of the project. So trying to keep things on schedule. I'm trying to stay in touch and making sure we're pushing them to make sure they're meeting the deadlines that we know that can be achieved. And so far, they've hit all those deadlines that we've been put in place since this COVID-19 took place. So I'll open it up to anybody have any questions. I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Tom. I had some concern about the lateness of finding out that some of the businesses didn't know that this was being proposed tonight. I think some of them knew, but some didn't. I have a couple of letters I'll read later during the public comment, but I have some concerns in that direction, but I want to turn it over to Corey because he's been pretty versed into this project. And before
we go any further, before we listen to Selectman matters, the big thing is the gas company typically is the only one that makes arrangements with the residents or the businesses. And as you may recall, when they relayed the gas main the last time, they set all the additional scheduling up with the homeowners and the businesses. The difference this time, all the new piping that would be needed associated with the connections have already been upgraded when they made the connections for the last time. So this is even easier than the last time that they made the connections to the actual property. So with that said, I'll turn that over to.
Okay, well, I guess I need to clarify myself. It was about the actual construction continuing through June, so, but I'm going to let Corey speak, and then I'll read their letters when he's done. And go ahead, Corey.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, this has been a project for everybody. We've communicated with all the parties, MassDOT, utilities, et cetera, and this has strained a lot of people. I completely understand the ask. We're dealing with the construction impact, but we're also dealing with the COVID-19 and the unknown surrounding that. We don't know what's going to happen, if we're going to have a second wave, if we're going to have issues in the fall. So I completely understand and respect the philosophical side of why they want to do this. Now, in saying that, you know, at least myself, and I believe that this current board has taken the position that we very much are aware of the impact of the businesses in this area. Some think that, you know, I mean, this is a community project, absolutely, but they're the ones who take the brunt of all this. You know, I made a comment a couple of weeks ago about having the road, you know, cleaned up for the summer, and someone took that as me feeling that it should be done for the summer visitors. And by no means was that my intention. I want it fixed for everyone. I drive through that road on a daily basis. It's just for everyone's sake. Now, I did over the last couple of days, you know, come across some business owners in the West Chatham Strip and ran this through their you know, thoughts, and you know, they've shared their opinions. Some I was able to catch up with today, and had no idea that this was even up for conversation. You know, I'll take the blame on some of that because I've tried to keep in communications with a handful of them, and they've reached out to me, and they've reached out to all of us. So that the impact on the businesses weighs heavily on how I'm going to vote on this. I think there's some emails that have been sent in. The chair may read. I don't know who is on the line specifically tonight that will want to weigh in. I get why the utilities want to move forward in June and try to keep moving forward and get stuff done. But I also got to weigh the concerns of the businesses because one for example, in the Chapahoy Plaza, you know, June, July, and August, those are the 3 months that make or break a lot of these businesses. And you know, they're saying how the utilities come in and they got the trucks and the state police and the patrolmen and everyone else is using up that parking lot, and it's hard on them. And they are very concerned. You know, we do that for another couple more weeks. Is that really going to break them? So I'd be curious to see what kind of comments we receive tonight. I understand what the ask is, but I think we have to weigh it in the eyes of our businesses that are going to be mostly impacted in this zone, and past promises we made to them. So I'm open. I've been open to this conversation. I met with Tom a couple of weeks ago when this was kind of roughly floated out there. We wanted to get more things in writing. And I respect the ask, but I really hope we can get some input from our businesses to make our decision a little bit clearer and appropriate. So I'm going to pass it back to the chair or the board, but I would like to allow myself some more comments later. But those are my initial thoughts. Thank you.
Sure, Corey. Thank you very much. Peter, do you have something you want to weigh in on this?
Just a couple of questions. Hey, Tom, on doing this, I guess my first question is, if we don't do it, what happens? I understand the problems with the businesses, and I saw a couple of emails. I also talked to a couple of people over there. Some were just sort of neutral on it. They were worried about it. When it's going to be done, it sounds as if, and just as if there's not going to be any lane closure. There may be a lane closure at this next week or so, but during the rest of the time, you have plenty. There'll be plenty of at least two roads that are going to be open. And this is, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with a lose-lose. And I remember the last time you came in, I thought we were pretty direct in saying, we're really concerned about the businesses. And I guess I saw one business owner that said this is his busiest month. But I guess the question is, like I said, if we don't do it, how long does it take us and what's going on? And the other part of that is, if we do it, we should be getting done quicker. And again, that's whether or not the businesses can survive. So I guess my two questions are, what happens if we don't do it? And two, what's the road going to look like over the next 2 to 3 weeks?
Yeah, I first of all, I think, this all came about on the 15th of May. And this was something that was put on the table because they were talking about, where we're moving forward and the governor coming up with a 4-phase and businesses being closed down right now. And a lot of businesses, when I drove by today looking at, the area, checking things out in the field, a lot of them still were closed. There are a few that are open, but a lot are either part-time open where they go opening at 11 o'clock and they're closing at 6 o'clock, where they're doing takeout type of service. But, the big thing is that, they asked us to look into this, and not knowing the uncertainty of this unprecedented time and where we could end up, in the next couple of months, when everything is back opened up, where does that leave the town of Chatham and the roadway network, and what is best for the whole community, including the commercial and residential and everybody involved. That to me is, they've met the schedules that we put forward since we started talking about this. We've jumped up where we need to be. We're getting to the point where the governor's next phase, as well as the gas company lifting their policy, we certainly can go ahead and have restrictions where they have to utilize maybe Lawrence Lynch's site area for the vehicles to keep them out of the lots. I think a lot of them are parking in some of these bigger areas because there's not businesses that are open at this time. But we certainly can put kind of restrictions saying you need to be sensitive to all these businesses. You need to park elsewhere until you're needed on a particular site. And if they're moving down the road, they don't need that. There's not a whole host of these things. Right now, they're working, the utility companies that are doing Verizon. I see more of the trucks down on the side streets with police like you're talking about, and on the other areas as they move down the road for their protection of their workers. But, we certainly can go ahead and hold them accountable where they need to be within that right-of-way layout, and keeping their entrances and their businesses opening so that they're flourishing during their busy time once they start opening. I think, nobody wants to work through the moratorium time. And is it the best option? No, but is it the place where we really want to end up at the end of the day, trying to get this thing done and completed and get everything so it's a finished product, and the businesses that are there aren't impacted, later on in a longer period of time? So, I'm just trying to, make sure that, all the residents and the businesses are going to be in a position that at the end of the day that they're happy when the project is over and ended on time, versus being delayed and dragged out, because we don't know what's going to happen in September and later. So I don't know if I've answered your question, Councilor.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Dean.
Well, thank you. I want a couple of questions and then a comment. So Tom, if there were no COVID-19 resurgence in the fall, and we didn't do this, we didn't okay this extension of work now, what would that mean in terms of delay on the completion of the project? Because what I've read from your memo was, if this went forward, the whole project is going to be done in the spring of 2021?
It could be done 2021 or part of that fall if we want to push the final paving off till, conducive for line painting and striping, but it could be done in the spring of 2021. If the contractor, if the utility companies don't work now and they don't get it completed, that means that they come back in September after the holiday, they start doing what they're doing now, finish everything up. That delays the contractor from being able to get the footprint of the road established and all the paved areas all bindered and the reconstruction done and everything set up to be able to start utilizing the roundabouts through the winter months and early spring. The only thing you'd have in the springtime would be the top course of pavement, the sidewalk top course, and also the plantings and whatever is left for their miscellaneous cleanup.
And we'd be dependent upon the utility company, the gas company, scheduling to come here right after Labor Day.
That's correct.
would there necessarily be a commitment that they would start immediately, or that's dependent on their schedule in general? We saw the delays in the past.
That's right. They jumped up into this area because they knew that we were trying to get everything wrapped up and squared away and get these footprints in. And then we had to do the whole relay. So that delayed everything, pushed everything back with the 2,300 feet of relay that they ended up doing ultimately. So, and then COVID came in and hit us hard. So it's not the best place to be, and you don't want to be in this situation and having unknowns that we can't predict and we can't watch. We can only know that if they're starting at a certain time and we can force them to finish at a certain time. The problem is it's when you don't know if something else is coming, if something else is going to interrupt the services. Are they going to be able to get back into the houses again, given the short period of time we have? So I guess that's the big problem that, and you have the problem having to vote. I have the problem trying to get it all done and completed in a timely fashion. So
how about the what they say, what the DOT says in its cover letter to you, where they talk about not putting a whole skim coat over that whole area prior to the close down for the summer, but patching certain areas. Is that the current status? And is that what would be included in this plan? It isn't just the utilities, but the condition of the road would be improved before the shutdown for the summer?
That's correct. Once they finish the side streets with the gas, they're going to come in and mill those bad areas all the way from essentially from Barn Hill all the way down to Ocean State in those areas where the main trench was, and then on the other side where some of that relay was. So they're going to be taking and milling and then resurfacing that, so you have a nice level surface throughout the entire.
But they're not going to resurface the whole road. They're just going to resurface those areas that are bad. That's what I read.
Yeah, they're gonna mill that whole trench all the way down with the limits of their work and some of the cross trenches that are outside of that, and make it so it's a very smooth rideable road. Then in the fall when the contractor comes in.
But it's not going to be one smooth course.
No, they'll be doing that in the fall. I mean, this will be smoother than what you see out there.
Yes, and is that included within the June 17th, June 19th date?
Yes, it's all within that same time frame. They're looking to do that the first week or so in June, as soon as the gas company pulls their side streets.
Well, thank you for answering the questions. Just a general comment. Like Corey and Peter, I'm anxious to hear what other people have to say. I read the emails that came in from a couple of businesses late this afternoon, and I'm very concerned for their well-being as well. But at the same time, there was the town of Chatham that insisted that the gas company come in and do a full relay, and we knew that was going to take some time. And we need to strike the right balance in terms of not delaying this project further. I mean, there's not a single member of this board who was on the board when this project was initiated. We've tried to do the best we can to move it along, and there have been some challenges along the way. And I think we have to keep all of that in perspective. But thank you, Madam Chair. No other questions at the present time.
Thank you, Gene. Nobody expected the COVID crisis to come into play of this either. And that's, I think, one of the bigger factors when I'm thinking about some of the businesses and what they're dealing with. I honestly need to be communicating with these businesses. They're really struggling with this, and it's been a long-term event for them. And I think we've given a lot of consideration for our downtown businesses and jumped through hoops for them. And the people up in West Chatham are really struggling. And it saddens me to get the letters that we got today in what I'm hearing, because on top of, dealing with the strain of COVID-19 and not knowing whether their business are going to make it, we're adding insult to injury and to some of these businesses and what they said. So I'm going to paraphrase one of them to give you some of the highlights of the letter. And the other one, I was told I could read verbatim. The first one is, I just learned of tonight's meeting, which I cannot attend. And I would like to say that the last schedule stopped road work after Memorial Day, and hearing that they are thinking of continuing is just wrong. As I stated in front of the board, June is my busiest month. maybe they could schedule the work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays, and at least give us Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to try to keep our businesses alive. Actually, I would not like any road work at all. GPS, Waves, and Google Maps all reroute traffic around West Chatham. If I don't have a decent June, I will be out of business by August. And the next one is, thank you very much for thinking of us. Corey came by and filled me in on the meeting. Unfortunately, I've had a previous commitment and unable to attend, but I would like to vocalize my feelings to you as well. We need to have a healthy month of June, and I don't see how we do it without the road work, let alone with it. Things at the store have been great, but after seeing this weekend's numbers, I am very fearful of our season. And as you know, the whole ball game is about 8 to 10 weeks. I know light work is being suggested, but this doesn't exist. Whether it be utility trucks filling in my parking lot or the state troopers parking in front of my store, we are losing parking spaces. Locals are avoiding the area altogether, and Waves and other GPS apps instruct drivers to loop around 28 because of construction. If someone is coming into Chatham for the first time and wants to go to the Squire, they are rerouted through Queen Anne and do not pass any of our businesses. I feel like this project is never going to end. The road in front of the shop has been under construction for at least 10 years, starting with a sewer project. We have gutted it out, but it has been extremely unfair to us. To take away anything from us in June isn't right. I do really appreciate your transparency, and I know you've tried to consider small business, unlike what has gone on in the past. Please feel free to read my thoughts. And that was from Josh Norris. So saying that, if the board wants, then I will reach out to members of the public to ask them for some comments. And then in consideration of that, we'll ask for a motion to approve or not approve this, this action item tonight. Is there anybody in the public, remote participants, who would like to speak tonight? Would you speak up and say your name, please? Okay, go ahead. Hello.
Hello, David Whitcomb.
Hi, Dave.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I certainly sympathize with the businesses, but I think in the long run, by voting for this to happen, it's going to shorten the length of time when the businesses will be compromised. I think National Grid has done everything that you asked them to do, including relaying this whole line. And it seems to me 2 more weeks of their work to have it over and done with, and then get the surfaces of this road in a lot better shape. The entire length of this road would benefit all of us. I think you can regulate the parking. I think that was a good idea, putting all the trucks over at 1610. I think you can do that, and I really believe, I go through this road as much as anyone, getting into the post office, and I think I think in the long run, this is the best scenario, especially because of the businesses that are compromised already with the pandemic and what's going on. So I hope the board will give this consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anybody else from the remote participants want to speak or weigh in? Okay, whoever is, could you mute your, okay, thanks, David. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the board. Corey, did you want to add in anything or make a motion? Anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments. Sitting down with Tom when this was first thrown out as an idea, before we had anything in writing to kind of understand exactly what was being asked. I mean, I'll be honest with you, from a personal perspective, I'm thinking, okay, this is a lesser of 2 evils. Let's try to get this thing finished up. We want to finish up this project. And have this thing put behind us. But from this is my own personal take, is I look at it as I've made a promise to the businesses that, over these last several years, that we are very clearly going to listen to them and understand their needs and their concerns, because they are dead concerned. They're 100% concerned. You know, I guess absent of their input, I would vote for this. But I'm going to be very frank. I kept the promise that I would listen to the concerns. I don't think it's the ideal scenario, but I'm not going to vote in support of this. And see if these businesses can, you know, they understand what they're asking. You know, they're taking a beating on this, and with this COVID-19 thing, it's just another lump in the whole system. It's tough, and they're scared, and they're worn down, and they want to have some hope of salvaging their June. I get it, I understand it. We can live with a bumpy road for a short amount of time. You know, in a perfect world, I hope all this kind of comes together. We can pick this up in September and get this project done sooner than later. But under the circumstances and under the fact that, you know, a lot of these businesses couldn't really give their timely input on it, I don't feel comfortable pulling, you know, there was an expectation that we would watch out for them, and you know, short of them really blessing this, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to offer a motion on this item?
Madam Chair, this is Peter. I just have a comment again.
Sure.
I'll give you a my cerebral opinion, from my head, and how I feel about it as a person.
Go ahead, Peter.
Logically, in a way, you could say that we are now at a time where we're just beginning to get businesses out. How many people are going to show up? How many people will start coming to Chatham? This isn't the June that it has been before. If we get this done, then what we're doing is we're avoiding doing work when we're in phase 2 or phase 3, when you're going to have a lot of people potentially coming here. Having said that, I grew up in a small business. I know what happens when, you know, short term, the local whatever does something and it kills you. I read those 2 emails and I could relate to that. My gut tells me that a couple of these businesses may not be able to make it. And what Corey said about, you know, we did make a commitment to them. So I'm really struggling with it. Logically, I think, and I'm sure other people will say it's not logical, but logically, I think we should continue with it. But if we lose 2 or 3 businesses on the way, it isn't worth it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I can't express more how communications with these businesses is important to this process, and you know, they need to feel that they matter, and even with the short term of this decision being May 15th, I think still we could have seen some outreach. Dean, did you have anything you wanted to add, or you want to make a motion on this issue?
Well, a couple of questions. I mean, I can relate to everything that Corey and Peter just said, and yourself. Tom, the regular date for shutdown, is it Memorial Day or is it June 1st each year?
It's the, I believe it's the 30th of May is what my understanding is.
Okay.
Or maybe it's the Friday before Memorial Day.
Because Memorial Day came a little early this year. And if this is not approved, the road condition is going to stay as it is right now, which isn't great. Everybody knows that.
I'm going to still request that they come in and mill and overlay that no matter what. I mean that it's in deplorable shape, and it's something that needs to be addressed. You know, whether
the final, yeah. The final question is there any way that they could work extra hours and get it done in fewer than the 2.5 weeks, which is what they seem to want?
I think it's something that we can suggest to them and ask that if they would be willing to do that.
Do we have to make a decision tonight? We're meeting again next Tuesday, as the chairman said, which would allow an opportunity to if I could just expand, allow an opportunity to speak with more of the businesses. We've heard from a couple of the businesses, but and maybe others might feel a little differently. I don't know. Does the decision have to be made tonight?
Well, I think we received a letter from the gas company, which I included in the packet, and they're not going to continue work unless they have a letter from the Board of Selectmen telling them that they can continue to work. So they were planning on gassing up everything tomorrow, which means you'd have 2 active gas mains, and then they were going to start doing the crossovers and the connections. So, you know, I think
if we don't vote this tonight, they're off the job as of tomorrow.
That's correct.
And this is extremely difficult because part of me wants to just get this project over with. In many senses, it's been a political albatross around the neck of the Board of Selectmen in the 5 years I've been on this board. And the sooner it's completed, the better. And I feel really badly for the businesses that are affected. And Tom, you had suggested, and I had thought of it myself, that the interruption of their parking facilities could be addressed if these vehicles and the state police were to park at 1610 Main Street, which is the Lynch property. I guess I would come down in support of it, but it's a very weak support. I'm not going to offer a motion. I'll let someone else offer the motion. But I'm not happy about having supported. I'm happy that they're wanting to come and correct the gas problem that they created. And it would be nice to get them in here and get them out of here, because I really do fear that after Labor Day, we may not see them for a while. And we saw that experience for weeks after Labor Day of 2019, and I'd hate to have to go through that when we have an opportunity. And it's a little more palatable that they're saying they could get it done by the 17th or 19th of June as opposed to the 30th of June. Because I think if it were the 30th, I'd be tipping in the other direction. Those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So is anybody willing to offer a motion on this issue, on this item? The suggestion is to continue through June 30th on the date, but not the 18th or the middle of the month as been proposed by Director Temple tonight.
Madam Chair, just to move this conversation along, I'll offer a motion in the affirmative. I don't plan on voting for it, but I move that we accept or authorize the proposed construct work to extend to June 30th, 2020 by the utilities as presented in our packet.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Madam Chair, I'll second it.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So the motion is to extend to June 30th as opposed to the 19th?
Well, that's what it reads in the packet, Dean.
Oh,
And we're only hearing that it's been changed to the 8th or the middle of the month by the update by Director Temple tonight.
I only added the 30th because the 19th is kind of an aspiration date. We would hope that it could be hit, but there's no guarantee on the 19th.
With respect to the Verizon company, I think they while they're moving along, they might need that additional time to the end of the month to complete their transfers on the electric side of things. That's why it was extended originally.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
I could not support June 30th. I could support the 19th.
Okay, so we have a motion to June 30th. Does anybody want to amend that motion? Because once, do you want to amend the motion to be the 19th or just leave it at this?
Madam Chair, this is Peter. I don't know if we could do that.
I don't either. So
yeah, I mean, it's they make the offer. We can't force them into the 19th.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second for the 30th. And we have any further comments from the remote participants? I'll take a list of people who want to speak and then I'll call on you. Is there anybody who wants to weigh in? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Selectman Kokolas,
No.
Selectman Metters,
No.
Selectman Nacastro,
No.
and the chair says no. Okay, so that's 0, 4, and one selectman recuse themselves.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Let me just find my agenda stuff because I'm now got papers everywhere. Sorry, guys. Here it is. So our next item of business is our coronavirus COVID-19 update from Director of Health and Natural Resources, Dr. Duncanson, and from the town manager. So we're going to do those updates first. Dr. Duncanson, are you there?
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board and the public at home. So for tonight's COVID-19 update, we just got some new numbers from the state, but stepping back a minute, worldwide, we are now at 5.6 million cases and over 350,000 deaths. In the US, we are almost at 1.7 million cases. So consistent with prior reports, the US still has about 25% of the worldwide cases. And unfortunately, just in the latest update, as of about 20 minutes ago, we have now passed 100,000 deaths in the US. We're currently at 100,047. So not a good milestone to make. In Massachusetts, as of this afternoon's update, which was later than usual coming out because they put some new information in there, we are now at 94,220 cases in Massachusetts and 6,547 deaths. For Barnstable County, we are currently at 1,286 cases, which went up approximately 6 from yesterday. And we are now at 111 deaths in Barnstable County, which is an increase in 1. For Chatham specific, we currently have 15 cases. We had 1 additional positive the other day, so our case count is now up to 15. And as we indicated, as we talked last week, we still have 1 death of a Chatham resident. As I indicated, there may have been more, but we only tally the deaths that are reported through the state system or other official source, if you will. So that is the latest in terms of where we are with the case counts. For other information, we are now about a week and a half into phase 1 of the governor's Massachusetts reopening plan. Each of these different phases, there's 4 phases in total, but each of the phases is separated by approximately 3 weeks. Although that could change depending on whether or not we see a change in the currently downward trends in a number of the various indicators. So our next milestone, if you will, in Massachusetts will be on or around June 8th for the initiation of phase 2. And phase 2 will affect things like restaurants, potentially the rental or the housing, the hotel, motel, short-term rental market, and additional limitations or additional relaxation of limitations on businesses and whatnot. So we're hoping to get some guidance from the state earlier than when announced by the governor, because in the last situation, when the governor announced everything and it took effect that day, that was kind of the first time that local boards of health and all got access to what was changing. And obviously we're the kind of first source that businesses and all turn to, and we didn't necessarily have all the answers at that point. So in our various conference calls with DPH and the COVID-19 Command Center last week, a number of communities across the state really reiterated that it would be nice if we kind of had a little bit of a heads up on that information so that we're better prepared to answer questions. And I think that's going to be even more important next week if there's changes to the restaurants, if they can move beyond just simple takeout into some form of, reduced seating capacity or outdoor seating, all the things that have been talked about, for the last 4 to 5 weeks, and how that might come to fruition, at least at the state level. And we do have a working group at the town level that's looking at potential changes either to zoning or planning regulations or even Board of Health that would allow restaurants to do some of the things that have been talked about, such as, increased outdoor seating and whatnot, which is very highly regulated right now. And so we're looking at some relaxation, some ways to make that happen fairly quickly should the state, approve it at their level. Some other things that are going on. One of the things that's going to be talked about tonight is the issue of recreational camps. Right now, recreational day camps are supposed to come along in phase 2, which would be starting next week, and then residential camps in phase 3, which would be later in the summer. So hopefully we will get some advance notice about those changes as well. And we obviously will be talking about those later tonight in terms of Chatham specific issues. One other thing that we're going to be putting out information on tomorrow, and this is really at the local level. So far, as you know, we've had our Emergency Operations Center open 5 days a week, and a large portion of what we've handled through the EOC has been helping residents with medication deliveries and food deliveries. And we've made great use of the CERT team to provide the manpower to make those things happen. As you can imagine, as this thing drags on longer and people start to go back to work and whatnot, the cadre of volunteers is starting to dwindle a little bit. So we followed up today with Chatham Village Market and also with the members of the CERT team. And starting next week, we're going to limit grocery and medication deliveries to twice a week. We talked with the folks at Chatham Village Market. They've identified 2 days of the week that are less busy for them. So instead of having deliveries kind of every day, we'd kind of move those over into 2 days a week. Obviously, if there's an emergency situation, primarily as it relates to medication, we will deal with that whenever we need to. But for routine prescription renewals and food deliveries, we're going to try to limit those to 2 days a week, just to take and make better use of our CERT volunteers who have really stepped up to the plate. We've had a team of 2 or 3 available to us pretty much every day for going on 2 months now. And they have really done the town a great service. The number of man hours they've put in. They've manned the Council on Aging food distribution once a month, which has been great. We've been able to keep that running as well, even though the Council on Aging closed. So those are some things, and we'll be putting out a press release on that tomorrow with the specific days. But we just felt that was a way to continue providing that service to the town, but in a way that doesn't maximize our volunteers and their availability. Following along on that, we have talked that once the Council on Aging gets kind of back in business, that's one of those things that we may transition back over to them to take. But right now, as you know, they're not in a position to do that. So right now, that's all I have in terms of an update on cases and an update on EOC activities, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Bob. That was a good update, and the CERT team has been really valuable to the community. I appreciate. We need to appreciate their work. Anyway, so I'm going to see if the board has any questions for Bob. Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No real questions. I'll just make a comment. I'm glad that and I know that the town has been working with the community development on looking at areas to open up our businesses, maybe to parking lots or outdoor and so forth. I think that's we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I think that's critical. And I think we've all been working with the state to try to make that happen. You drive around town, and I have to say that I think that guys are doing a great job. I do notice that a number of people, there were more people this past weekend wearing masks than I saw previously. Of course, we had weather that too, that it wasn't as busy as I expected. But anyway, thank you.
All right, thanks, Peter. I'm going to switch it up a little. Jeff, you want to, do you have anything for Dr. Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Dr. Bob, good update. I would like to also thank the CERT team volunteers. I think they've done a great job for the town, and they ought to be recognized, and hopefully we do something for them. I see from my perspective, my healthcare organization, that the cases are leveling off and hospitalizations are going down, and ICU visits are down, ICU days are down as well. So hopefully we're ahead of this thing, and social distancing and masking will still be effective as we enter the summer. So I look forward to the conversation later this evening with respect there too. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. How about you, Corey? Anything for Dr. Bob?
No, I don't have any specific questions. I thank you for the update, though. Thank you.
Thanks. How about you, Dean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Bob, for the update and to the CERT team and Chatham Village Market, frankly, and the other grocers in the area. And I appreciate that we're going to talk in a little bit about the ideas for outdoor restaurant service and what that might import. But I did have a question, Bob. I noticed that 4 or 5 days ago, the state reports that you circulate stopped including a box that showed the hospitalization rate. And the last rate I saw recorded last week was 3%. I heard on the radio today that the number of hospitalizations from COVID around the state is around just over 2,000. Is there a reason why that figure is not being given? I assume the rate continues to go down, which is a very encouraging statistic, not just in terms of dealing with the virus itself, but also in the ability for hospitals and the healthcare system to get back to normal operations, because that has been a major victim of the shutdown, and everyone was discouraged from taking their medical conditions to the emergency department, and elective procedures were curtailed, and so the hospitals are broke. And in addition to the economic disadvantage that has been caused, not just locally, but throughout the state, throughout the country, the healthcare system is in some jeopardy financially. So I just wonder, do you have any comment about the hospitalization rate?
Yeah, I don't specifically. You're absolutely right. Last week, the state did change their dashboard that they provide, and they're reporting things in slightly different ways. They've now included some graphs of longer term than just, kind of the daily hospitalization rate.
Yeah.
So now, they do show a 3-day average of COVID-19 patients in hospitals. But they don't show it necessarily as a percentage. They show it in absolute numbers, and obviously it has continued to trend down. So yeah, they just continue tweaking the information that they're putting out and the way they're putting it out. So yeah, I don't have a specific reason why they stopped showing that. I think the way they're showing it now is better because it's showing a longer average, if you will, as opposed to just a daily number.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the remote participants for Dr. Duncanson? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to Town Manager update.
Thank you,
Hi,
Madam
Jill.
Chairman. So we've been focused for the last 10 weeks on communications and continuity of operations. And the communications part of it has been community updates, and very grateful to the efforts of Director Mary from the Chatham Chamber of Commerce of helping us get the information out. And we're also put in a page in the COA June newsletter, so information on resources available, including some updates on town meeting and the town election. Because we've been so focused on continuity of operations, where hopefully not too many residents or businesses felt that they weren't having their issues addressed, we've been able to work remotely and on rotation, but there's always been someone to answer the phone and answer emails. We're also working on the return to work and the reopening plan for town offices. And unfortunately, we're finding we're still under the same requirements that other businesses are under relating to the 25% occupancy. So we're trying to work through that. As you know, many of the older town offices aren't really set up for good social distancing. And so we're trying to work on some structural modifications that aren't really structural. We're not cutting holes in walls or anything, but the plexiglass and items to provide safety measures for the employees when the public comes in. So we're still working on that, as well as our workplace plan that we're required to do, and also information about how people will come into town offices. Will we have them take temperatures? Will we have to do contact tracing? So a lot of this stuff is in flux. So the gist of it is, it doesn't look like we're going to be opening to the public on June 1st. It could potentially be June 8th, but I'll certainly keep the board up to date on that. But we also have drop boxes and plenty of ways for the public to interface with the town employees and get access to the various divisions and departments. But it's taken us just a little longer working through the workplace modifications that need to occur. And that's it.
Thanks, Jill. I really think the continuity of services has been outstanding by the town. I think that you've done a great job with the staff, and I haven't heard anybody really having challenges with any of the things that they've needed from the town. Any comments from the board? Let's start with Jeff. Anything from Jeff?
No, good update. Thank you very much, Jill. Good job. I hope to see
Okay.
everything. Hope to see everything open on the 8th.
How about you, Corey?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Dean?
No, thank you.
Peter?
No, thank you. Yeah, good job. Thanks.
Okay, great. Well, that was easy. Thank you, Jill. That was good. Okay, so the next order of business is reopening strategy discussion, the governor's order, joint meeting with the Park and Rec Commission and the Board of Health. So I'm tasked to give a regional reopening task force update. I just want to say that the meetings are still ongoing twice a week. They're lasting about an hour and a half. A lot of what has been worked on is providing feedback to the advisory board. Some of the bigger issues that have come out is the county has put together a new website, and it's looking really good. And it's in support of municipalities and businesses for resources. It's more from a county level versus the state level. And that is that website is www.reopeningcapecod.org. The subgroup committees that have been working on some of the things of partnership with what has been mentioned prior, beaches, short-term rentals, and the childcare needs beyond essential worker childcare. I think that everybody's still waiting for that protocol to come from the governor's office. But some of the things that are concerned is workforce impact with childcare and with the camps and things, because we'll be talking about that a little more later on. And how to get enough to be able to protect children with, the impact of PPE and some financial stuff that was some concern. There was not much. I think the commission, the Cape Cod Commission is working on has their dashboard up. They have a number of surveys. They're compiling regulatory information for municipalities. General resource for a go-to for anybody that needs those kind of things. But they continue to meet. Is a result, I think that our selectmen's meeting, association meeting next Monday morning will be in relationship to getting a bigger update on and bigger issues that we can discuss. Does anybody have any questions for me on that? Jeff?
No, thank you, Shireen. I look forward to the discussion with the Board of Health and the Park and Rec.
Okay, Corey?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Dean?
No, thank you, but I do appreciate your putting all that extra time in that project.
Sure.
Thank
Big
you. Peter?
Ditto. I only have one question. I noticed we had a survey coming from the Lower Cape, and what maybe we'll talk about that later, but it's not, it seems to be asking something that the regional group has decided not to do. At least it was my impression.
Yeah, so we're, it's down the list, Peter. We'll talk about that survey that came from the Elbow Up meetings that Jill and I have been attending. That's a little later down in the agenda. Okay. Is there any questions from the remote participants at all?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Steve Buckley. I have a
Hi,
question.
Stephen. Go ahead.
The meeting you were talking about with the Cape selectmen and counselors, is that going to be available like this, where either Zoom or
Yeah,
something like that?
it's an association meeting, and it was a matter of administrative information that I gave to the board. So it's our association that meets monthly as a non-political, I mean a non-government organization. It ties in with the Mass Municipal Association, and so we'll be just meeting. We meet to discuss and get updates and information on a monthly basis.
Okay, so it's not available to the
It
public.
won't be, yeah, no.
Okay, and
I mean,
is
I can
that-
check, but I'm not sure the public has been invited to those. They're usually, Stephen, a breakfast at 7 o'clock in the morning at some location on the Cape once a month by all the selectmen.
Oh, well, is it being virtual now?
It is virtual for this meeting, yes.
Oh, okay. Then if you could check on that, I'd appreciate it. Plus, are any of the regional task force meetings available for Zoom or Microsoft Teams?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay, moving on. The next order of business is beaches, recreational facilities, programs, summer camp, daycare, public restrooms. And I'm going to turn this part of the meeting over to Chairman Fry from Park and Recreation Commission, and she'll lead the discussion on this item. Meredith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the first time we haven't had a chance to meet or discuss anything. This is our first, can you hear me?
Yes, we can all hear you.
And we are in phase 1. So I think I'm going to ask Dan to give a staff overview first.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Fry, and members of the Board of Selectmen, Board of Health, the Park and Rec Commission, and members of the public that are here. We have a number of topics. I had sent out a sort of an outline form of some of the pertinent topics relative to Parks and Recreation, beginning with beaches, and we can work through. I'm also joined this evening by members of the Parks and Rec Department staff who can also provide additional supplemental information as needed to what I may provide here to you also. So with that, in that outline, and I'm happy to work through this as to whatever is convenient for all the parties involved. But beach parking, I just looked at this from a person going to the beach, and the first thing they're going to encounter is beach parking. The resident stickers are for sale through the permit department remotely, and I know that sales have been going on for that. For non-resident parking, there was some question as to how that would be done, whether it would be necessitated to be done remotely or whether that could also be done through cash sales. The guidelines that came out from the state relative to beaches do allow for cash sales as well as encouraging remote sales. So in Chatham, we will have an option for non-residents, if so approved, to go in that direction if needed. I guess initially I just want to, I don't want to be assumptive or presumptive relative to doing beaches. Our beaches in Chatham have been open and have not been closed at any point, but what we're really speaking to this evening is the operation of beaches in some semblance to how we have operated beaches in the town of Chatham in the past. That would be opening the beaches on Friday, June 26th to paid parking and staffed with lifeguards or beach patrols on the beach. So I just want to make sure that that is something that all of our boards are comfortable moving forward with before I go through the other litany of procedures that we would follow to carry out that that process. So I don't know if the boards want to discuss that before I go further. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I mean, I am all set with the beaches operating as usual. We do have a lot of new rules, and we were given the COVID-19 beach safety rules. Are these going to be posted at all our beaches? Or is this just a phase one?
Yes, those would be posted at all beaches. There'll be a lot of conditions, signage, and new procedures and protocols that, you know, we'll have to institute as part of operating the beaches. But I just want to make sure that that's a direction that everyone's comfortable with if we're proceeding to operate them in as normal a fashion as we can, or as a similar a fashion as we have in the past, taking in the new restrictions and guidelines that we need to follow to do that.
Meredith, it's Bob.
Yes.
Yeah, if I could just chime in quickly, because you raised the issue of that signage that you just had up.
Yes.
I can tell you that Barnstable County is having those signs made up in bulk, and they will be distributing them free of charge to all the towns on the Cape, with the idea that everybody will have somewhat uniform signage. So obviously we can put up additional signs ourselves, but we will have a number of those signs, hopefully by the end of next week, that we would have enough to put at all of our locations. And we can also make them available at the couple of semi-public beaches that we have as well. So I just thought, you know, it was important for you and the Board of Selectmen to be aware of that.
Okay, great. Thank you. And
if I may comment, Meredith?
Yes, Ira.
Yeah, the topic one is called beach parking. And some people, I think Governor Baker at one time has suggested we limit parking to 50% of capacity. But I think a more important thing that the Park and Rec Commission needs to discuss is, do we allow non-residents to use our beaches, or should it be restricted only to residents as well? I know that at one time we were selling one-day passes so that tourists could drive down from outside the Cape and use our beaches for one day. Personally, I would be opposed to allowing or selling one-day passes. And I think we need to consider, do we restrict use of our beaches only to residents or to non-residents to some extent, to allow people who are here perhaps for several weeks or a month, should we allow to use them as well, use our beaches as well? I think the underlying concern that I have is for the safety of our residents. We have to keep that paramount in our minds. And even if we restrict use to perhaps banning non-residents, which would have a profound effect on the business community, I think we need to consider what the effect would be on people coming in for short time. So that's my comment as well.
Meredith, I have a question.
Yes, Kim Robbins.
Ira, I agree with you that safety is paramount, absolutely. And I also had thought of the one day versus the weekly passes, like eliminating the one-day pass. But I want to, because I have experience with the short-term rentals and I have had very lengthy conversations with other people in the hospitality industry, including resort managers in town. For me, or what my experience is based on the weekly, and actually, just to let everybody know, we are more geared now towards longer term, 2-3 week month rentals. Our weekly rentals have actually decreased significantly. However, if you limit the day passes, you are impacting the hotel motel industry significantly. So those people who would go into, the various resorts in town or the inns typically are a day or 2 day. So if you restrict that, then you're making them buy weekly passes or whatever. So I'm just letting anybody know that anything that you restrict is very impactful for every aspect of the hospitality industry. So for me, it would be okay, but not for, an inn down in downtown Chatham. So I just want to put that out there. But I agree that safety is paramount. But if you are able to socially or physically distance people, then, then that's not so much of an issue. And as far as the signage, I'm already on record as saying that there are so many signs at all of our beaches, and I think we need to post signs, but if we can do this in a very clear manner and an attractive manner and putting it up, unified in each beach, including those that don't have, we have many beaches that don't have lifeguards or lifeguard stands like Forest and Pleasant Beach and some of the other ones. So we need to do that as well. So that's what I have to say on that matter.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Eldridge. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, on the, if the parking is restricted to residents, if the parking is reduced capacity, then we might have to give more thought to just allowing residents than non-residents. I'd also like to weigh in on Kim that we've been discussing this as a group, but the signage at the beaches, there's so many signs. So whatever we do, I think it's going to be very important to limit those signs and have very clear signage.
I mean, I think the signage in this case is mandatory, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no, it's not that. It's whatever mandatory signage, but also to look at it with all the other signage that it can be a clearer message.
Yes, exactly. Just don't clutter it because then it becomes desensitized and nobody will read it. So that's all we're saying is let's do it clear and clean.
Okay, so we're now on beach parking and it moved to signs. So let's discuss the parking and the passes. Do the selectmen want to weigh in on this, or do we make a motion as a commission? I'm not sure how we're supposed to proceed.
Well, it's your commission to proceed how you want. If you want to make a motion, Meredith, and then bring it out to the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen for some comments, we can weigh in then if that's the direction you want to go. It's entirely up to you, or we can weigh in now.
All right. Well, as a commission, do we have? Does anyone want to make a motion on the beach parking, resident, non-resident?
Well, Ira, again, thinking back about all of our beaches, the middle of the summer, they're packed. There are some occasions when we have to turn people away in the afternoon. And as I said earlier, I think Governor Baker has suggested one proposal about limiting parking to 50%. In other words, leaving a space between two cars. But the issue that we're talking about is access for residents. And if we're going to discuss this further, then I would like to make a motion that we limit access to beaches to residents and also non-residents perhaps who are staying for a month or more. In other words, my motion is to exclude people who come down for a very short time. So I'll try to make that as a motion that I will propose that we limit access to the beaches, all the beaches, the town beaches. This does not include Lighthouse, of course, I'm referring to town beaches, that my motion is to allow only residents and those non-residents staying for a month or more.
I don't know, do I say I disagree? That would kill the industry, Ira. It would, everybody's coming here for the beaches. Every single phone call I get, for anybody who's coming here, whether it's for 2 weeks or whatever, it's all about the beaches. And it's just, it would kill the economy if we did something like that. I know Wellfleet did something where they reserved one beach for the residents only, if that would be an option, but I could not support a motion like that.
David Aldridge here. Yeah, I would echo Kim. I think it's a little too extreme. The thing I'm trying to understand is, as the hotels and motels and rentals start opening up, how is the whole 14-day self-quarantine from coming out of state? How's that going to play into all of this?
That's not a mandate. That's not
It's a
enforced.
suggestion, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
Meredith, if I may comment,
yes.
I don't know that there's been a second to my motion, but I would like to add that we would ask Dan Tobin to coordinate with the surrounding towns and find out what their policy is, number one. And number two, if this motion is passed, that we review it early in July to see if we can modify it in some way. But I haven't heard that there's a second.
I don't think you have a second on your motion, and I would like to hear from Dan, because I think Governor Baker changed the 50% capacity. I feel like
they changed it, yes.
Yes.
Is that people have to be 12 feet away from each other on the beach, and if there isn't any more room on the beach for other people to come in, then we close the beach until it opens up. Is that correct, Dan?
That's correct. I can try to answer a couple of questions here. To my knowledge, the only town on Cape Cod that I believe is not selling daily parking tickets or passes, if you will, to individuals will be the town of Wellfleet. The towns of Orleans, Dennis, Yarmouth, Barnstable, they will all be selling daily parking to non-resident individuals. And to the question of the percentage of parking, early drafts of some information that we received was relative to the 50% rule, where you would allow only 50% parking in any lot. What they've modified that to is allowing communities to evaluate the situation based on the beach and setting the number of cars, in essence, based on the number of people that realistically can sit and be in compliance. The rules on the beach are obviously staying 6 feet apart from each other when traversing the beach, but toweled groups, and that could be a group of 1 person or 2 people or up to 10 people in a toweled group of individuals, a family or something to that effect. But between toweled groups, the guideline there is for 12 feet between toweled groups. So we'd have to evaluate. Fortunately, we're getting some dredging done on some of our beaches. We may have some more square footage, but we're going to have to evaluate that on a real-time basis to see what could be accommodated on the beach safely and what the capacity of cars is that, and then operate from that point until such time as regulations are changed in any way by the governor's office.
So the fact that we are going into different phases and hopefully moving forward, I believe that we should sell our parking, our beach stickers as we usually do. And we're just going to have to manage the parking, and the guards are going to have to watch the distancing, and we're just going to have to move forward the best we can. Would anyone like to make a motion, Kim or Dave, in that regard? Or I'll make the motion.
What would the motion be to forge ahead with how the state has presented their guidelines as far as parking and not limiting?
Resident non-resident beach stickers as we've always had in the past, and day passes.
Yeah, I would make a motion for that. Can I just ask one question to Dan? Because we have such differing beaches and because tides really play a part also in the capacity of the beaches, I understand that parking, also is an indication of who's on the beach, but doesn't it really matter how many people? And like, we have so many people who walk to a beach or bike to a beach, like, I don't even know if it's feasible. This is just also new. Like, do you have a counter and say, okay, only like 100 people on this beach, or like Schoolhouse Pond, for example? I think you could fit you can't 12-foot distance. Yeah, you can't. It's impossible. If you were going to do a 12-foot distance, you'd have 4 people there. So I'm just at a loss. Kind of
to do right now is be 12 feet apart between groups.
Right. So I'm just trying to figure out how to kind of word this motion, because I think we should,
well,
obviously
just on beach stickers right now. So
okay, beach stickers. So I make a motion to go ahead as per usual for the weekly and the daily.
I'll second that motion, David Eldridge.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Are you going to ask for public comment?
Meredith, I think that we'd appreciate it if you'd ask us to weigh in on that.
I thought you wanted us to make
a motion and a discussion, and then we would weigh in on the discussion, and then you would vote. So you've already voted, and so on that item, I'm not sure we could take it back up again. But if you're willing to allow a revote and let us weigh in, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health and the public, then we can move forward. But that's your call. You're the chairman.
Well, I would invite the Selectmen's opinion, of course, and the public.
Okay. And so does that mean you're rescinding that vote or tabling that vote to be reconsidered?
Yeah, table the vote and hear from the public and the Selectmen.
Okay, well, we'll work through this, Meredith.
This is hard because it
is.
I've never done this before.
Oh, and don't. And, yeah, don't worry. We'll work through this. It's crazy to have to do business like this, and then you hear random people yell out, and it gets a little addled. But we'll work through it. So I'm just gonna take it on to my board, and then we'll move it to the Board of Health if that's okay, and then it'll come back to you guys. Is that okay? On this item? All right. I'm just going to say a couple of things about the idea of, if we do, at first I thought we should, do resident only, what Ira had said. But then I thought about the idea of, if we're not going to do day passes, we're creating an economic disparity here with people that aren't here for long term and can afford a month-long vacation. Does that make them less healthy or less conscientious about what they do than somebody who's here for another month? One of the things that I did hear from some people, and I don't know if this is part of this discussion, but I wanted to bring it up before I forgot. A citizen emailed and made the suggestion that perhaps residents could have an early opening option where residents only could get a space at the beach for an hour before it was open to the general public. That was just a thought. But I think also what is really super important to this whole thing is what we do here today with any of this kind of stuff, we have to really take into consideration how it's going to impact our towns next door. So we really have to be thinking in not doing anything too drastic or at this point. But I'm going to ask Jeff to weigh in, and then I'll move it along the line, and then I'll throw it back to you. Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I was going to ask Dan, what is Harwich doing? You mentioned Orleans, Dennis, Yarmouth, and Barnstable. What's Harwich doing? Do we know?
My understanding there is they only sell at Red River Beach. That's their only beach that's open to non-residents. I know they were talking about limiting things to 50%. I have not heard officially whether they're excluding non-residents from that beach or not. I believe their intention was to have that still available for some non-resident sales, but I don't have a definitive answer to that.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And I echo the chairwoman's comment. I initially thought limiting access to the beaches for residents and non-resident taxpayers might be the way to go. But given the discussion on West Chatham and how strongly we feel about our local businesses, I do think not having a one-day pass would really hurt our hotels and motels and our resorts, if you will, which are the kind of the mainstays and the bedrock of our economic backbone here in Chatham. That being said, I really would like to hear from the Board of Health on whether or not they think social distancing, we can pull off the social distancing and the masking. I think it's incumbent upon us as a town to try to have masks being worn on and off the beach. And if you can't social distance on the beach, to try to wear your masks the same way that the governor and the Commonwealth has come down until those restrictions are lifted. I think it's incumbent upon us to be responsible fiduciaries of the public's health, to have masking on and off the beaches. If you can't be socially distant, no matter how full that parking lot is, put a mask on if it's full. Put a mask on. Put a mask on when you're coming to the beach and leaving the beach if you can't be socially distant, and be socially distant on the beach. Now, I worry about Forest Beach, worry about Jackknife Harbor, I worry about those places where we don't have lifeguards. I think we're talking most specifically about Hardings Beach, Lighthouse Beach, those beaches where we have lifeguarding. Is that a fair statement, Meredith and the Park and Rec?
I mean, it is.
Are we going to have signage at those other
People
beaches?
at Jackknife today, and people were social distancing. I mean, you have to take personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And for these guarded beaches, we need probably to hire more guards or to watch the social distancing, so our patrols and guards can actually watch the water, what they're supposed to be doing, and not worry about groups of people playing games or socially distancing. So that's another discussion to be had about hiring maybe additional staff, and that will give people the opportunity for work as well.
I appreciate your comment about there is personal responsibility here, big time. I mean, people have to own their behavior, so we have to rely on hopefully the intelligence and the carefulness, the probity of our public that come here to visit. So, but I do think, and I really was kind of against selling single-day tickets, guys. But the more I thought about it, the more unfair I think it is. If we're gonna stop the work down in West Chatham in favor of the businesses, then I think we can sell a day pass to the beach. So we'll see. The other point I want to make, I think it's very important, and it's been made, but I'll repeat it. It's important that we are able to revisit this issue should guidance change from the state and from the governor, or should our experience change as the summer evolves here. I think it's important that we monitor and that we're willing to change should needs be. Okay. So thank you. That's all I've got. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. Corey, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, Madam Chair. Well, my first concern comes from if we take an action on our beaches, like the Ridgefield, the Cockle Cove, the Hardings, the kind of the target higher volume. I mean, we have a very unique beach structure in Chatham. So my concern would be if we did something in a manner at those beaches, are we going to push an issue to some of the more hidden nooks and crannies on our coastline that we don't monitor, that we don't have guards, that that might abut more residential areas? Could we create parking issues? I mean, there's all kinds of like ripple effects on how we make these decisions. So I understand we don't know, we don't have a magic answer for the entire summer on any of these issues. So my bottom line is I'd like to be able to take an action, and as Selectman Dykens has mentioned, revisit it, monitor it, because this is an ever-moving target in a sense. I would be open to, kind of let the bit passes operate as they have in the past, and work with the social distancing, work with the mask protocols. I think people are going to self-regulate to some extent. But we also need to understand that we need to keep the resources, the guards and the gate attendants and whomever we're hiring we need to give some support and resources to them because it's going to be a big ask on their part too. So we're going to try something, and I want to be able to amend it as if it's working or not working as we move along. Because I don't think we're going to make a decision and it's going to hold solid for the entire summer. My own personal perspective.
There was some discussion of not selling passes at the beach, that you actually had to get them at the town offices. So you wouldn't physically be passing money or having to use a card of some kind, that you would have to physically go or get a sticker from the town office for a day pass.
Yeah.
He ain't happy.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I could.
I'm sorry. Could we hold on just a second? Somebody's speaking out of turn. Whoever's behind, who's ever saying, yelling out. I'm hoping that you'll wait to be recognized if you have something to say. Right now, we're going through our the Board of Selectmen. So, Corey, have you finished what you needed to say?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Corey. Dean, have you any comments for the Park and Rec commissioners?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Is the authority to regulate the beaches vested solely in the Park and Rec Commission, or do the selectmen have general authority over that? That's a question I have. And I also would be very interested in what the Board of Health has to say on this issue. I'll leave that question unanswered for the moment. And let me just make a procedural comment. I'm looking at a full page of topics here, and it's almost 8 o'clock. We're going to be here till midnight, and I think we should have had some recommendations from staff, or perhaps a prior meeting of the commission. And I'll just throw that out. But the impact of what we do in terms of access to beaches is not just on the beaches, it's on the whole demographic of the population of the town of Chatham, which skews very elderly. And I think we have to be very concerned about the potential crush of an impact from summer visitors. And I respect what the businesses are going through. They've been through a miserable couple of months already. And it's not going to be easy for them going forward. But I do fear, and it's a Cape-wide concern, and I'm sure you've experienced this conversation, Madam Chair, on the regional task force. We have an impact potentially on food availability, on the public health. I tend to come down where Ira comes down, and I think we should limit access to beaches to Chatham residents only, and that's full-time residents and seasonal residents. And I understand what Corey said about the distinction between the smaller beaches and those that are staffed, but I'd be willing to accept a bifurcated solution to those, where these smaller beaches, people just go to them. But I think we should limit the access to Chatham residents. And I also I certainly would encourage the social distancing and the other guidance, including masks, but I would not extend a mask mandate beyond the downtown area that the Board of Health imposed last week. But those are my comments. I may be in a minority. It sounds like I probably am, but those are my views. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And we don't have to take, or the commission, it's up to them, but they don't have to take action on these items tonight if we wanted to have a more broader discussion going forward. So and then do an update or have another meeting going down the line, because this is their first meeting, having met in a very long time. We're all working through it. Meredith and John and I talked this morning. I talked separately to them, and we're trying to figure out the best approach to all of this. And it's a matter of timing sometimes, but maybe we can suggest that we get through this one, Meredith, and then look to see what you need to prioritize, or some general discussion.
We
And-
tried to meet, just for the record, and we were shut down. We're not allowed to meet because we're an advisory board. So we did want to meet 2 weeks ago. But there's so much here that's going to change. And we are in charge of everything, for the community center, the parks, the beaches. There's the rec programs, tennis, pickleball. There's so much, and it's overwhelming right now because we're at the hands of our governor and this COVID. And it's so confusing and it's difficult to make. We can't even make decisions, and we can make comments and advise which way we'd like to go, but we're at the hands of our governor right now in COVID-19.
So,
I respect
so-
the position you're in. I
so
do.
let's just say that nothing's needed. Like maybe we look at, or maybe we look at just the beach side of this tonight, and the rec programs are another time. Because you don't have all that information from the governor at all. We have the beach information, the guidelines, they're there. But as far as the recreational department programs and the camp stuff, we don't have any information from the state yet, Meredith. I'm not trying to get off topic. I'm just trying to get us through a
Well,
process.
I just don't know where we're going to begin and where we're going to end.
So let's keep working on the beach side, and then perhaps you guys will consider some consensus on the parks and the recreation department programs, and then we'll schedule another meeting, whether it's you guys meeting, I don't know, maybe next week, or we move that forward again to next week, some of the other stuff. Because this is a lot to deal with.
I mean, we need to probably meet in phase 2, if we get to phase 2, with Governor Baker, and he gives us more guidelines.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And
So I guess what I'm saying is, why don't we finish up with the beach stuff and whatever motions you need to make tonight. I know I'm still waiting to hear from Peter. We want to hear from the Board of Health on the beach stuff, and then we'll turn it back to you. How's that?
that's good. I would also like to ask Dan if he knows how many stickers have been sold already.
I do not have the current number for resident stickers. We obviously haven't sold anything to non-residents. So anything that's been sold through the permit department, I don't have that particular number at the moment, but that is ongoing remotely. And I don't know where we stand with that right now.
Okay.
Peter, we're still waiting for you, but I did hear Dean mention that he was looking for perhaps some staff recommendations on some of the other stuff going forward. Peter, did you want to weigh in on this, and then we'll turn it back to Meredith for the Board of Health?
Yeah, please. Just a comment on the vote that Meredith took. I don't think she has to worry about it because you have to poll individuals, so that wasn't done. So maybe she's okay. Just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my thought on the whole beach issue. It's the beaches and parking can't be looked at it as an individual. Take individual pieces. It's really a system. Here, what is it that we're really going to be doing at the beaches? We know we have guidelines for right now for entering phase 1. We know what those guidelines are. We know that there has to be at least 12 feet between groups. That limits the amount of people that you're going to have you're available on the beach. That's going to drive how many cars you're going to have that are going to come in to a point. So, we have to understand what that means to each particular beach if we're going to look at beaches. And I agree, we should look at the ones that we're paying for, where we have lifeguards, and then look at the others. I'm not as what would you call it? I'm not as reasonable to think that the people that are going to come here that are all going to be social distancing, and they're going to be, they're going to watch what they're doing. If you take a look at what happened to some of the beaches and from the people that come from, areas that come to us, we're going to have issues and problems, I think, and we have to be prepared for that. And if we don't, that's fine. That's good. Now, the whole idea of how do we sell, how many beach stickers are we going to sell? If we're limited to the number of people that can get on a beach at a particular period of time, and we have people buying day stickers, I wouldn't have them sold at the kiosk as you come in. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't pass money back and forth. It's, you know, you're moving anyway. But if we're going to sell those, and I understand the business part of it is, what happens when they can't get on the beach? We pay them back because they can't get on the beach because of social distancing. I came originally from the point of view of, you know, residents and non-resident taxpayers, and I lean in this case towards our locals, our local group, people that are over 60, which is half of the people that are here. I understand the business is going to have a problem, but what are the businesses going to do when they can't get their people onto a beach? And that's a question you guys have to consider. You look at Harding's Beach, use it all the time. You could spread out on Harding's Beach. We have 2 lifeguards, but you could spread out all the way out to Stage Harbor. And it's been done over the summers quite a bit. So who's going to watch that? And do we have other people that are going to take care of that? That's probably one of our main beaches that we have to worry about. And I could just see Jackknife Point. I can see cars parked on both sides of the road, and nobody's going to worry about whether or not they got a mask on or not, in my humble opinion. So I think this needs a lot of discussion. And I wouldn't put a vote for it now without having a real good look at how many people you're going to be able to put into a beach. That'll control how many stickers you can sell. And that takes a little bit of thought. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a general number. And then you can worry about the bathrooms, which is another issue. You got to clean those things all the time. And do we have those, or we put porta potties down? You know, you got to, and so there's a whole host of stuff. So I agree that maybe we should allow Parks and Recs to have met earlier, but that's okay. We still have time. My comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Meredith, I think we're ready to turn it back to you for Board of Health considerations.
Okay, so are we gonna hear from the Board of Health right now?
You can call on them to yes.
So, who is available from the Board of Health?
That would be me, Meredith.
Okay.
John Beckley, I'm the
Hi,
chair.
John.
Hi. There's an awful lot here to talk through, and I haven't studied this myself that much. I like what Peter said, however, in regard to following the beach guidelines associated with phase 1, which is dated May 18th. And at least from a public health perspective, if we had assurances that our beachgoers were in essential compliance with those safety standards, I'd be fine without restricting access. But I think the key is going to be, we as a town are going to have some type of beach monitoring. Somebody walking up and down the beach with a brightly colored shirt, or somehow somebody observing how the public is managing to comply. But if we can assure that there's good compliance with the 12-foot distances and the 6-foot distances and the wearing of masks. I mean, the face mask requirement is a separate governor's order, and that applies to everybody when you're outside if you don't maintain 6 foot of separation. So those are my comments. I'm going to ask for any Board of Health members that are on the call who would like to offer some comments, to please do so now, or maybe I'll ask them one at a time. Dr. Ward, do you have any comments or thoughts you'd like to offer right now? Dr. Ward, are you on? Let's go to Dr. Hansen, Dr. Noble Hansen.
Yeah, John. I agree with the thought that it's the total number of people on the beach, and can they or do they maintain the 6-foot social distancing and the 12 feet between groups? How you monitor that, that's a big question. And then secondarily, the parking and the number of stickers would be, theoretically key to the number of people on the beach, and we may not know that until we get rolling. In terms of the masks, the beach will be like every place else. The governor's order is that if you are outside and you cannot social distance 6 feet, you must wear a mask, and that would be held on the beach as well. I don't think that would change. So basically, I agree that there's a lot to get to here tonight, and I'll end it there.
All right, Ed Sheehan, would you like to offer any comments? I'm assuming that Ron Broman is not on the call because he wasn't on earlier, or are you there now, Ron?
Yeah, I'm here.
Ron, do you have any comments to offer?
Yeah, I've read over that letter that came from the governor on May 18th, and I think it's pretty clear what our duty is as the Board of Health, and that is to monitor the beaches and make sure people do that. How we're going to do it, that's another question.
But that, I agree, that is the goal. Those are the standards that have been set forth, and we have to just advocate for that. Dr. Ward, are you available now? Okay, I haven't heard anything else from Dr. Ward, so Meredith, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to ask Dan and the staff, I know we have staff here tonight, and what they would recommend or what their feelings are.
Okay, Meredith, if I could, all the points raised by the members of all parties here are certainly valid. We would need to supplement staff to manage the visitor level at the beach. I don't want to call it social distance police, but we would need to know and manage to a capacity so that we were accurately doing that. That could not be the function of the lifeguards. The lifeguards themselves really need to be strictly focused on the situation at hand in the water. We would need additional staffing to deal with the beach situation. The social distancing aspect is as mentioned by all of you in your thoughts, are fundamental to exactly how we do things. I think up front is getting an understanding, because I understand there are different feelings, and those are being expressed here as to who we're servicing and how many people we can service. I know over the weekend, apparently Schoolhouse Pond was wall-to-wall people on a nice day. I think it was Sunday. That's a 15-car parking lot. It far exceeds what the capacity is. You could probably park 4 cars with 2 people in a car and probably max out the available space if you're social distanced between various groups in that one parking lot. And that's a resident-only parking lot. That doesn't account for neighbors walking in or the parking that takes place along Sam Ryder Road going into that particular beach. So these are real and distinct challenges just in that simple little example of Schoolhouse Pond, magnified by a Hardings Beach or Lighthouse Beach or the others. It will take personnel to manage those situations and to make this work effectively there, whether we're letting in residents or non-residents. Obviously, there's a factor. Most of the communities on the Cape are allowing non-residents in as part of their plans, and we have worked along guidelines that would allow for that. But again, that's a very fundamental discussion right out of the gate here as to who are we going to be admitting into the beach. There's one scenario if it's just residents. It's another scenario if we're selling passes to non-residents. So I'm glad this discussion is flushing out, and I think it's an important fundamental to the entire beach operation scenario. We do have staff recommendations and plans to operate things, but I think it's fundamental to understand exactly what you would like us to operate with. Thank you.
I think, could I ask that, Meredith, that we ask Dan to schedule a meeting of Park and Rec? There are some issues that we haven't even touched on, like restrooms, trash pickup. I don't think we should take up the time of the selectmen to go into those details. So can we ask Dan to schedule a meeting just for Park and Rec to go over some of these issues?
I am happy to do that, yes. If
Are
there's
we
no-
allowed to meet as an advisory group alone?
Meredith, we're working on that, and I think it's on our next week's agenda. So, you know, that's the best I can tell you right now.
So we can't even
Madam-
schedule a meeting.
Well, not tonight, no. But
Madam Chair, this is
Yeah.
Corey. Can I throw a question out to actually Park and Rec and Board of Health? Because we're talking about, whatever we decide to do to the beaches, social distancing and monitoring it and helping everyone. In our packet, we have a page that's listed COVID-19 beach safety rules.
Yeah.
In the middle of the page, there's the individual with a mask on. It says masks are required when 6 feet of distance cannot be maintained for ages 2 and up. And it goes on to say masks are not required to be worn while swimming or sunbathing. So according to this, anyone sitting on the beach is going to be sunbathing. They're going to be sitting off with their mask. You're not supposed to be swimming with a mask on. So if you go leave your towel and walk down to the water, you're not going to be wearing a mask. So I'm not getting hypersensitive about anything, but what are the expectations of how we monitoring that level of concern with this message? So that I'm not looking for an answer right now, but I think it's something we need to kind of think about and process what our expectations are and of the guards or whatever resources we utilize on the beaches based on the messages that we put out there. So I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but if I'm throwing this out there that we need to kind of process that and think about it.
Yeah, and just if I might, to answer the question that Selectman Metters has, that's just the masks are certainly required when entering or exiting the beach and passing by others, but certainly not when you're in a toweled location or doing that thing, and obviously not when swimming either at this point. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not sure where we're at. Are we gonna continue with, are we gonna table everything until the next meeting and we're in phase 2? Madam Chair?
Madam Chair, are you taking any
can you hold
comments
on?
from the-
Yes, hold on. I think, Meredith, what you need to do is get some comments
And hear
from
from the public and then, okay.
And then we can go back and see what action items you'd like to make, like whether you want to get more staff information, and whether your request, and we can talk about your request to schedule a meeting going forward and how to do that. This hasn't been the easiest. There's a lot of devils in the detail here. And I think the most important thing, I think what you need to do is to have heard from the Board of Selectmen on policy and the Board of Health on the safety side of this, and then you guys can move forward with what is needed. And staff can give guidance as to what they need almost, for a timeline too. That would be helpful. So if you want to call on the public.
Can I ask something for a quick second? I was on mute and I was trying to say something. Am I allowed to?
I don't know who's speaking or.
This is Kimberly, sorry, Meredith.
Okay.
Kimberly Robbins. Before the public speaks, am I allowed to say something or should I wait?
No,
Okay.
I mean.
Just four quick things to speak to what everybody had said. I think we all need to keep in mind that the summer population is going to be significantly muted already. We're not going to have the numbers that we normally do. So I know everybody's thinking that because of there might be crowding down at Schoolhouse Pond over Memorial Day weekend. It's not going to be that way. I see firsthand what's happening and what's happening and I've spoken again to all the other business owners in the hospitality, and we are not seeing weekly rentals. We're seeing people who are booking for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. So it's not going to be the population that we have ever seen before. It's going to be much, much different. So I just want to kind of quell the fears of, the masses coming. I mean, our population is definitely we're going to have an uptick, but it's not going to be the uptick that we've seen in the most recent years. And that data goes Cape-wide. I've spoken to many different owners of all different types of hospitality and different platforms. And so that's our data right now. We have 2, 3 weeks and month long. The number one thing that everybody wants when they come here are the beaches. So if we do limit it to residents only, as I already mentioned, we might as well just cancel the summer, which also means that we have no guests to come to our restaurants, no patrons, nobody to go into your restaurants and all that stuff. So you just have to understand what the domino effect is if you limit those beach passes to the daily. And I understand protecting our residents. So what Wellfleet did and some other towns did is they designated one beach for residents only. I don't know if that's a solution. I really haven't thought that one out completely, but that's a thought to give residents or locals, one beach, or not even that. I mean, most of the rentals are within walking distance to the beach. So are you going to tell somebody who rents a house that's a half a mile to the beach that they can't walk to the beach at the end of the road? It doesn't make sense. Or I don't know, it just won't fly with them. The other thing somebody else mentioned is what other towns are doing. If we do one thing and we're very restrictive in the town, it's going to send everybody to the next town or whatever. So we really need to be harmonious in, I believe, what we do. I think that's what Massachusetts did as a whole with Maine and the other seacoast communities where they didn't want to shut down the beaches, because if we did, then everybody would flock to a different state. So we need to consider that. As far as a monitor, I think that's a good measure to do. There are beaches like Forest and Pleasant, which don't require stickers, but they have 25 or 35 spots. Dan could speak to that. I'm not sure how many Forest has. I don't have a count on how many Pleasant Street has, but if they're every other, and I don't know if those would be monitored as well, that's already going to naturally, cut down on the population on those beaches. So those are just things to consider before the public speaks, and I'd love to hear what the public thinks about this. But again, if you say locals only, it doesn't only affect tourism, but it's going to affect your business, and it's going to affect everybody down the road. A restaurant who can't who doesn't have a patron, does not have the money to buy fish from the fishermen, and then they cannot in turn, employ the wait staff, who then in turn can't afford their gym membership. It's just a domino effect. So just keep all that in mind when you're considering closing down the beaches, or not closing down them, but limiting them. So that's it for me.
Meredith, it's Bob Duncanson.
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to address one thing that you mentioned before, because you mentioned phase 1 and phase 2. As far as the guidance on the beaches, I will be very surprised if there's much substantial change with beach guidance from the state in further phases, with the exception of, the limitations on the size of groups. But I think the social distancing standards and guidance, I think we're probably going to see that in place pretty much all summer. So I think what you're currently seeing on the beach guidance is pretty much going to be the same for the season. So I wouldn't get too hung up that phase 2 is starting, potentially in another week or so, because I don't think there's going to be that much change in those regulations. So I just wanted to throw that on the table for you.
Okay, thank you. We'd like to hear from the public.
Janice Rogers.
Elaine Gibbs.
Okay, Janice Rogers.
Yes. Hi.
Lauren Sheldon.
All right, Janice.
Hi.
Terry Bassett.
Okay, I'm going to let Janice go first.
Thank you. Some very good concerns have been expressed. I have some thoughts that are not necessarily solutions, but they are some thoughts. Every summer, my family has decided to try a different beach, and we might go to Skate It or whatever and get in the line to get into the parking lot, finding out it's closed.
So there, some towns have done, they've put up little stakes and little ropes and little areas and staked off like areas that a group can be habitating on the beach. So it's already like marked out, planned out. Once those are full, you close the parking lot. And people would just understand that they didn't get there on time, the parking lot's closed. You can't control people, as someone mentioned, people that ride bikes or walk to the beach, especially at Harding's. You can't turn them away. I think that parking lots on Cape Cod traditionally are closed when they're full. And if somebody comes to the Cape for a week or, you know, even 2 weeks and finds out that they can't get access to the beach, it's going to hurt a lot of people, as Kimberly pointed out. So basically, that's what I have to say. Oh, the other thing is, if you did do it that way, you could mark off certain areas close to the parking for handicapped access. In other words, mark off like certain of those little, I sent Dan Tobin a picture of one town, what they did this morning with a little marking off. It's like little stakes, little ropes, and you could have certain ones designated for handicap closer to the parking, and the rest of the people would have to walk a little further. And once those spaces are all full, it's done. I've gone to the beach in Rhode Island where they basically let cars in, people wait for maybe even 20 minutes, half an hour to get into the parking lot. And when somebody leaves, they let another car in. But I think the whole idea of restricting the parking, I mean, the beach stickers and all that could backfire. And that's basically my contribution.
Okay, thank you, Janice. Elaine Gibbs?
Yes, Elaine Gibbs. I'm concerned by listening to this that we're talking about safety versus revenue. I think the objective is for us to be able to get through the summer with us intact and flattening the curve, because if we don't flatten the curve, we're going to find ourselves at the end of the summer with the governor shutting us down more. I think we should take a lesson from Memorial Day. The weather was terrible, but we had a massive influx from other states. The national networks were saying that because New York, as an example, had shut down their beaches, that they were fleeing to the New Jersey and Cape Cod beaches. That's what's going to happen. I think we all witnessed that people were coming from the highway and going to the grocery stores. They were not quarantining, even though we had one sign that says you have to quarantine. If we prematurely say we're going to open our beaches and the other surrounding towns say they're going to close their beaches to summer to only full-time and residents or summer residents, they're all going to come to Chatham. And we're talking $20 for a carload of people. I agree with Ira and Dean that we should restrict it to Chatham residents, full-time and summer. We need to get through this summer. Particularly if you're going to limit parking, people are going to come into Chatham and buy a one-day pass. They're going to go out on the beach. They're going to take up a parking space. They're going to lay out their blankets and they're going to be there all day. And Chatham residents won't be able to use those beaches. And we are the taxpayers. I think we've been doing a really good job. Our full-time residents and even our summer residents who have come in, we've been wearing masks. We've been doing the job. I can't tell you how many people I saw over Memorial Day weekend in the terrible weather that were not wearing masks. They were walking down Main Street, even they're passing the signs that said, wear a mask. At Lighthouse Beach, groups of 5, 6, 7 people, nothing on them. I don't think we owe one-day visitors anything. If we do that and they bring, they don't follow quarantines and they come in on the beaches and they don't follow the rules, we do not have the capacity. Lifeguards shouldn't have to monitor that. There will be people who are going to abuse it. Not having bathrooms open with running water to wash your hands. The idea that we are restricting people to porta potties when we're concerned about germs and we are not going to open up our bathrooms so that they can wash their hands and use a disinfectant is the total antithesis of what we should be doing. I I think people have to understand that I appreciate the fact not all the jobs are rentals and retail sales. The fact of the matter is we have tons and tons of people who try to open up their businesses here. We don't get revenue as a town from retail sales or house rentals, zero, but they cost us a lot. And they bring in people who may or may not have any relationship to the town except they're on vacation. And they're going to want to ride their bikes and they're going to want to go jogging. And I saw it this weekend. And if that portends the future for the summer, we're going to have a hard time managing the influx of people coming into this town. I would again urge you to restrict the beaches to people who are residents and are full and summer residents. And so we can get through the summer and pray to God that we don't have a spike, because if we do, we're all going to hurt into the fall, into the winter, and next spring. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Meredith, it's Lauren Selden.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not going to, I don't want to repeat everything that other people have said. I just want to make a couple of comments. One is you are definitely going to need more personnel. I think that Dan has indicated that because you cannot rely on the goodwill of people. We've seen too many incidents already where people have not been considerate of others and have just flouted the rules. The second concern I have, and I agree with those people and talked about restricting to residents and summer residents, even and the month-long residents, is there are people who come for the day who are not staying at B&Bs or hotels. They drive down early in the morning from anywhere, from Connecticut, from Boston. They buy a one-day pass at the kiosk and they spend the day and fill up the parking lots and the beaches. And you will be seeing, I fear, many residents who will be turned away. They don't get there early enough. So I think you need to have consideration for that population. I think a lot of the things have been said. I'm not going to repeat it, but I think we need to think about the health and welfare of our community. And this, of course, includes the economic. And it's I know it's kind of difficult to weigh, and we're not trying to weigh health or wealth. So I think we need to recognize that there are going to be major issues with trying to limit the number of people on the beach and in the parking lots if we just open it up to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Florence. Anyone else from the public?
Terry Bassett.
Yes. Terry?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think we should open the beaches to residents only on all beaches, including Jackknife and Forest Beach, with 50% capacity. We should revisit this order weekly, see how it goes, and open up if we see that we are safe. It's easier to go at this gradually rather than to try to close it down midway. Safety first.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Hello, this is Steve Buckley. I have a comment.
Yes.
I agree that the Parking and Recs Commission should be able to have a discussion and be able to reach consensus and provide their advice to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health and whomever. And if they'd been allowed to do that before tonight, then this would be a much shorter meeting.
Yes.
And I think that I think that all advisory committees, because I understand this Board of Selectmen are going to be discussing this issue of allowing advisory committees to begin meeting again will be at their next, as the Madam Chair of the Board of Selectmen indicated, next week. I think that there should be an encouragement in anticipation of a decision to allow those committees, like the Parks and Rec Commission, to schedule right now meetings immediately following that decision, so they're all ready to begin doing and coming, as Mr. Selden indicated, addressing the details of how to go forward. So that's my suggestion, and I'm noticing how this meeting is progressing, and I advise that because it's so easy to set up a Zoom session or whatever without a lot of effort at all. Everybody in the world's doing it now, and making a recording, this can be done. So that's my thought. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so even though, Bob, you said that the beach rules will probably remain the same, the fact is people are coming, I mean, there's just so much that we're dependent on our governor that we can't really make decisions right now. I mean, we can make suggestions and recommendations, and then it's going to go to the selectmen and they're going to recommend, but we really need to meet before the season begins because we don't really know what we're doing yet. And I did see in Eastham, they did have a hand washing station before, in Wellfleet, next to porta potties, before you enter the road to the beachcomber, they had a hand washing station. It looked like a porta potty, but it said hand washing. So I don't know if that's something we can consider. But I don't think our fear is the beaches with people. I mean, we're outside, we're distancing, we're in the water. I mean, people are going to be here no matter what. And we also have to consider residents, summer residents, people that are they going to open the hotels? I mean, if that happens, so we're all dependent on what our phase is, not with the beaches, with the health the beaches, but with the people who are allowed to come to the hotels. Or are they going to let 50% capacity in hotels? I mean, that would depend on our governor. So we definitely need to meet before the beach season opens, and we would like to meet as a commission. So I don't know where we're at. If we table it till next week, or we're allowed to meet in 2 weeks.
So Meredith, when I looked on the agenda, we actually have reappointments of boards. No, hold on. We do have a directive for us to talk about committees and boards being able to meet next week. The idea of this meeting was well intended, and that was to move along the discussion and with us jointly to see if we could effectively get information to you on how we're feeling, and that maybe there would be some action items moved tonight. But it's clear that this isn't really shushing out the way that we thought it would. But if you want to move forward in any manner you want tonight, and either take no action or make a recommendation to us, we'll definitely work on a better approach to this for the next round.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Dean, go ahead.
May I offer a suggestion?
Sure.
In keeping with some of the comments that have been made, and these topics are obviously within the expertise of the Park and Rec Commission more than they are in the Board of Selectmen. We can sort of weigh in as we just did, and as the Board of Health did philosophically. But we have made an exception to allow the Park and Rec Commission to meet this evening. And I think as we're approaching the beginning of summer, it makes sense for that commission to meet as expeditiously as possible, rather than having to wait for the board's decision next Tuesday on what we're going to do with committees generally, unless the town manager, has a concern. It was her directive that we endorsed, I believe, a few weeks ago, that bars the committees from meeting. I would like to suggest that we make an exception. We continue to make the exception for the Park and Rec Commission so that they could schedule a meeting very soon. And then they can take up all these multiple topics and feedback to us and to the Board of Health, whatever recommendations or suggestions they might want to make to us that we have jurisdiction over. They may have jurisdiction over things that we don't. So that's my suggestion.
Second.
Jill, do you want to comment on that?
I do. The recommendation for the pause on the regulatory board or non-regulatory boards and committees was before we had the governor's directive. And we've been bringing back staff to work on these very issues. So I would recommend that the Park and Rec meet next week and provide the Board of Selectmen a recommendation no later than their meeting on, I think it's June 9th. Beaches aren't going to open until June 26th, but I think that there's considerations that the Park and Rec needs to hear, especially about daily passes and how they should be online. There should be no handling the cash, and staff needs to lay that out for you so you can make those good decisions. So I fully support the Park and Rec meeting and meeting as soon as possible that you can get a quorum so that staff can start chipping away through these various topics with you.
Does my board want to make a motion to support that recommendation by the town manager? Okay, a second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'm going to take a vote on that. Peter?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Okay, Meredith, you've got the go to meet, and we did our best to try to do this in a manner. I appreciate the time that your commission has spent with us tonight, and also with the Board of Health as well. And good luck with making some of the decisions and recommendations that you're going to bring forth to us. And I know they'll be done in the best possible manner. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Work in progress, we are. Okay, the next order of business is a Main Street events parking traffic flow regulatory review for alterations. Jill, I'm not sure who's going to make the presentation on this. If you can give me,
Sure, we have a couple of things, Madam Chair. So we had the chamber had put forth a recommendation for traffic flow on Main Street. And I know you have a memo in your packet about the regulatory review for alterations, that there's been a preliminary discussion and you have information there. For Main Street, I'm not sure you have enough information to make a recommendation. The department heads had weighed in, and we had sent you a packet earlier today if you had a chance to review it. And I think that's it for me. You've already made the decision about the 4th of July Independence Day Parade, and I think that was key. And I'll turn this back to you if you want Mary Kavanaugh from the chamber to weigh in.
Yeah, Mary, I'd like to have you make your presentation on the parking and traffic flow that you had proposed to us, and then we'll have a discussion on it.
Sure. Thanks, Madam Chair, and other Board of Selectmen members and public. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak with you tonight about Main Street Chatham for the upcoming summer season, specifically traffic flow, outside sales, and events. Our Main Street traffic flow proposal that we had talked about a couple weeks ago stems from the desire to provide a safe, socially distant Main Street for year-round and seasonal residents, visitors, and also our business owners and their staffs. What we are proposing is similar to what's been done in Provincetown and is being implemented in other cities and towns across the country.
And we've been discussing the following topics to accomplish this goal. A one-lane, one-way Main Street from the Rotary to Shore Road headed east. Widen sidewalks with the use of a lane of Main Street to create space for social distancing. Designated parking spaces for drop-off, pickup, and to-go order fulfillment. After reviewing the comments that we received yesterday from Chief Paulina, Deputy Chief DePasquale, and DPW Director Temple, we'd like to have a vote tonight to form a task force, which would consist of those departments along with representation from the Chamber and Merchants, the Board of Health, Board of Selectmen, Parks and Rec, Economic Development, and Traffic Safety. And the purpose of this group would be to work collectively to see if our goal of creating a safe, socially distant Main Street plan can be achieved. Time is of the essence, however, and we would like, for this group, if you vote to create it, to meet within the next few days to discuss our ideas further and be able to report back to the Board of Selectmen with a plan for you to vote on. And we were hoping to try and get on the agenda for the June 2nd meeting, but I know your agendas fill up. So that is kind of what we're thinking in regards to traffic flow.
Okay, Mary, thank you so much. So instead of making a recommendation on this traffic flow, you would rather table it and to figure out something new going forward? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Well, what we really would like to do would be to be able to work closely with the the police department, the fire department, the Board of Health, a rep from your board, and really sit down and talk about our ideas and their feedback that they gave us this week, and see if we can come up with a plan and then come back to you all with the plan that we come up with. There was a lot of information that was shared by police and fire and
You're watching it? 'Cause
DPW.
I'm going upstairs. I'm going to watch it on my iPad.
So we wanted to be able to work with them, to come up with something more concise.
Okay. All right. Any thoughts from my board on this? Dean, you worked with the chamber before, downtown merchants and whatnot with before. I was wondering what your thoughts were on this.
Well, I think a collaborative approach makes a lot of sense. My impression in listening to Mary's comments was that the agenda would be limited to the traffic flow, or are you going to talk about things like shop opening, restaurants opening? Because there have been suggestions about these facilities, these businesses using portions of the sidewalk, for example, or public parking lots to accommodate service to customers outside that they can't do inside, because we have yet to hear from the governor on his proposals for mandates for restaurants or guidance for restaurants. Do I understand you correctly, Mary?
So what we were talking about was traffic flow, also the widths of sidewalks to be able to socially distance. So, I mean, I don't think the group that I've been working with would be opposed to, bringing that kind of into the conversation too. It kind of all fits in together. But our purpose was to be able to create, safe, socially distant sidewalk spaces, for visitors and residents alike. And then we also wanted to, and this would tie in as well, in regards to outside sales. We all know that, the governor has been encouraging, things to be done outside. So to minimize the numbers of people in stores, we also wanted to request maybe for a vote to waive the permit requirement that's in place right now for businesses for outside sales for this season. And, just being able to do that, ties into our Main Street traffic flow proposal for creating more social distancing. So that's another thing too.
Yeah, Madam.
We wanted to bring up.
Go ahead, Dean. Yeah.
Madam Chair, yeah, I mean, I wasn't intending to overburden the agenda of such a working group were it to be created, but Mary has touched upon some related issues, and beyond the issue of waivers that might be permissible under law, we know there are some things that are not currently permissible because of the zoning laws, and town council, in the opinion that's in the packet, does sort of offer a suggestion that enforcement of some of the restrictions such as parking requirements that the planning board would ordinarily approve of might be somewhat relaxed. I'm in favor myself of some policy of relaxed enforcement from town leadership on this, and I don't know if we're going to get to that point in the discussion tonight, but that's another issue. This is sort of all wrapped together. I would just say, until I saw the memo from the police chief and the deputy fire chief and the DPW commissioner, I was inclined to support the proposal, but they raised some very legitimate concerns, and I do appreciate the willingness of the chamber and the business community, I assume the downtown merchants as well, to try to work to collaborate on some resolution of these concerns and come up with a better plan. But yes, to answer your first question, Shireen, I think a working group would be a useful thing to do. I served not as a member of that group. It was a body that voted. I was, we specifically set it up so that it was a private entity, and I was simply the board's liaison to it.
I see. I understand. This looks like a little more substantive. We can't, I know that economic development has not met and they aren't scheduled to meet yet, Mary. So
Okay.
I don't know what your timeline or your projected timeline would be on this for going forward. So I'm sort of open to other suggestions from the board to see how we might be able to facilitate a more efficient discussion and moving forward. Corey, do you have any thoughts on this? Understanding, yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, first I should probably make a disclosure.
Yeah.
I'm a 20-year merchant downtown. But this is obviously a public safety COVID-19 scenario, so I'm obviously going to participate. Working group concept doesn't bother me at all. I'm just trying to figure out. I think we have some time constraints, so we obviously want to move this conversation along.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that process is going to be viable to put together in a short term. The traffic pattern, I wasn't surprised by some of the staff comments. Fire and police have been pretty consistent on their views of downtown traffic patterns, over the years. So that didn't surprise me at all. The outside activity, display, merchandising, sales of goods, I do think has some benefits. But on the flip side, I'd like to try to figure out, if we were to explore something like that, how we manage crowds, because there's one thing to manage a crowd within the constraints of your own structure, your four walls. But when you get outside, you get that open air feel, which has wonderful benefits, but you may not be able to manage a crowd coming forward and buying something or entertain, whatever the element is. So I think we need to really think hard about management of that kind of stuff. But I think we got to start thinking outside the box. We have a timing issue in place. I'm frankly just about open to just any idea out there. We got to run it through the system to see if it makes sense, make it sort of safe and viable and equitable. It has to be equitable to the community. but we got to figure out a way to move this along in a very short manner. So those are my initial thoughts.
So this is kind of ironic that we're asking, but Jill, since we had the discussion of not getting enough feedback from the West Chatham people, in interacting, and we're trying to affect that right now, Jill, is what kind of resources would we have to be able to, have staff work with the chamber on, or the downtown merchants on trying to work out some sort of, concept?
Well, I think I would assign it to Katie Donovan, our Director of Community Development. Usually zoning is the underlying issue that we have with a lot of matters before us. So it's just like what we do for a development review team. We get all the department heads together and we review to see what's feasible, what works, to give preliminary input before it actually goes to the regulatory board. So if we want to do that, if you want a board member, or however you want to do it, I think that, I mean, this is a priority. We're going to need to have some kind of plan in place as we look to reopening for phase 2. So I know Katie's done some research and she's done great on special working groups. So that's who I would assign, and I think she'll just make it happen for us.
Right. That's great. All right. That's good to hear. Any other board members want to weigh in on this? Jeff, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, no, I'm still very excited about the plan that the chamber has fronted, and the Merchants Association. I've longed for Chatham's downtown to be more pedestrian friendly, with traffic actually slowing down a bit. I think one lane. Is it one lane you might be proposing, or is it 2 lanes, one way?
No, it would be 1 lane, 1 way.
Okay,
Yeah.
that very much pleases me. I was disappointed, understood the points made by the fire chief, and particularly the chief of police, and Tom Temple, but I was disappointed that that there might be safety concerns. So the fact that the notion that a task force would address those very concerns and do it in short order is very attractive to me, and I suggest they do that with some alacrity. I would also suggest that it's incumbent that we have a member of the Board of Health on that task force as well.
Mhm.
Even maybe more important than a member of the Board of Selectmen, to be honest with you. And then I would also try to take up the notion of fast tracking any zoning regs that disallow our ability to use the sidewalk area for outside sales. And I'm open to suggestions to fast track, the relaxation of any of those regs that might get in the way. So very supportive. I'm very supportive of downtown as a more pedestrian friendly area. And I love the notion of one way going east and the one way going west. Actually, that's kind of the natural flow of the downtown. So I'm very much in favor of it, and Godspeed. Go, go, go.
That's 2 ways.
Okay.
It's going from east to west on the starboard side of the street, and it's from east to west to east, I should say, on the starboard side of the street going east, and then it's on the port side of the street. It's going from east to west. So I mean, it's one way pedestrian traffic is what I see.
Okay, so we're building on consensus to do
Yeah, I think a task force is great.
task force, but it led under the guise of Katie, Director of Development. Peter,
Board
any
of Health.
thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with what Jeff said and previous speakers. And I have to admit that the only thing I was concerned about when I first saw the one-way traffic was the fact that we couldn't do away with parking. And the police chief makes a good point. Those cars are there. That all over the nation, when you have cars parked between the road and the pedestrians feel safer. Traffic is slowed somewhat, but I do agree that it would make sense we have very narrow sidewalks. So, even if you get to use the parking lanes, there's still a number of people that are going to be close together. I wholeheartedly agree a task force is necessary. And I think we read in some of the reports that were put in, like the deputy fire chief said that he'd be willing to do it. And I think that makes an inordinate amount of sense. Having Katie as to support that, I think that is good. A couple of thoughts just on zoning. Some of the zoning things we could probably get around ourselves. Some require town meeting, unless we get the governor to or the legislation. Right now, there's legislation being proposed, and the governor's being lobbied to be able to let businesses like restaurants open up in their parking lots or into public places outside, since they're only going to be able to use a small percentage of the internal. I would, just as a thought, there's a couple things that we could do quickly if we have to do it, and we have to have you go through some sort of regulatory process. Downtown is both the planning board and the HPDC, both our regulatory commission. They can meet together. We can, there ought to be a way we can fast track. If you need a site plan, it doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be developed by an architect. It can be sort of a hand-drawn one on one that you have already. So there's ways that we can get around that, but it'd be much, much easier if we had a governor's ability to just go beyond that. And hopefully we'll get that soon. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Dean.
can I offer a suggestion?
Sure.
Two suggestions. Well, one in light of what Peter just said, I would, and I know we're not discussing the substance here, but I would push farther than on items that might require a town meeting vote to change zoning bylaws, for example, because we're not going to get that done in time. I would push for some sort of board endorsed policy that the town adopt some protocols for relaxed enforcement of those requirements that are consistent with the state guidelines and consistently applied. But as far as the task force, perhaps what we should do is authorize or request that the town manager, if she feels she has the resources to do this, set it up as a working group, just as she did with the senior center. And perhaps I agree with Jeff that a representative of the Board of Health should be on it. Perhaps someone from HPDC and the planning board, and maybe a selectman or two. Peter has considerable expertise, as does Corey, in the planning side of things. I'd be happy to serve if people wanted me to do that. I don't have any particular expertise outside of a legal background, but that's neither here nor there. So those are my suggestions.
Okay, valuable suggestions, Dean, always. So, Jill, is this something that you could address and take on?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay.
Katie's already texting me. This is right up her alley, so
Yay.
we can get started as soon as tomorrow.
All right. Do we need a motion or a consensus? Is a consensus enough for this for you?
I just want to make sure that we just clarify who you would suggest to be on it. This would be a committee that would then come back and make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
Mm-hmm. So I think that what Dean had made suggestions about it would be representation from the chamber, HPDC, Board of Health, Community Development, the selectmen, and planning.
The Merchants Association.
And the Merchants Association.
And it's not a committee, because otherwise
it's a task force. Sorry, Dean, you're right.
It's a task force or a working group or whatever of the town manager.
Working group.
Otherwise, that will be limited on when we can meet and how we can meet. Deal with. I just have to text the Jill saying that.
Yes, and then I know that the fire and police chiefs will want to participate as well. So I think we can get this going pretty quickly.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from the board on that?
Yeah, Shireen, there was an excellent, I thought there was an excellent memo from the town of Amherst, their approach to relaxation of the regulatory constraints. So I think we've got a pretty good guide path right there in that memo. Thanks.
Right. Okay, so CPD, CFD, we've got it. All right. Good. So a consensus is fine with you, Jill, to move forward on that?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, comments from the public?
Can you hold on just one moment, please? Dean, on the zoning board, for us to talk about whether we should adopt a sort of a policy to deal with the protocols of loosening some of the guidelines as much as we can. Should we, how do you suggest we go about that? Because I think there's been a lot of discussions on many levels about what we can and cannot do. And I know that Katie has done a bit of work already, but if we're looking for a board directive, is that what you're trying to say?
I would think that, thank you, Madam Chair. I would think that if this working group were to come up with a recommendation that could be presented to the Board of Selectmen, I'm not prepared to frame it. I'm just trying to latch on to a comment that was made in Pat Costello's memorandum. He says enforcement can be discretionary, and words to that effect. And that may be all we have to go on, unless the governor or the legislature, and Peter mentioned that there are 2 bills in the legislature to deal with things like alcoholic beverage. We can't do anything with that at all. That has to be done. But our zoning is largely a town matter, and we're not going to be able to change. We don't have an emergency zoning bylaw safety valve like the town of Amherst has proposed. And we wouldn't be able to get one done in time for this summer. So I think we have to have some sort of a reasonable application of the existing zoning, taking into account the state guidelines, and we could develop that into some language. Maybe even town council could weigh in on that if and when this working group decides that's the way to go.
Okay.
I'm thinking, for example, of the business that, let's say, a restaurant that has a parking lot. They're required to have so many parking spaces by the planning board. And now they want to use part of those spaces for outdoor service. And they're not able to do it. So if we have some sort of protocol or parameter on how that could be done, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Katie,
this
go
is
ahead.
Katie, if I could. Hi, thank you. And thank you all for your confidence in me. One of the things I wanted to mention, as noted by town council, is we are facing some uphill battles with our regulatory review waiver, with the ability to waive any of our regulatory review. One of the things that we've begun to look at is that another town on the Cape has done something through their Board of Health by an executive order by their Board of Health, and we've started to explore that option with town council, and we'll also be reaching out. I think Judy Giorgio has reached out to the chair of the Board of Health to discuss if this is an option. So that's one of the things that we are looking at. But this
Katie,
is
what town was that?
It was the town of Dennis.
Okay.
So the other thing I wanted to mention is, this is something that there's, many communities are looking at this. I actually did a webinar today on livable streets, and all of these ideas were brought up. So I think that reaching out to peers around the community, around the state, I think it's going to be beneficial just to hear what other communities are doing as well, and to see how they're operating and making things happen. So
okay. Thank you very much. Anybody else from my board? Anybody from the Board of Health want to weigh in? John, do you want to? Are you guys still there?
Yeah, I don't have any comments. I would invite any of my board members to, if they'd like to now.
Yeah, this is Noble Hanson.
Go ahead, Noble.
Yeah, I just think the task force should also look into the art festivals that are downtown and the Monday nights on Main, which attract crowds. That's part of the whole package, and how that would work into it, but should be probably dealt with at the same time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, any public comments? Please call out your name and then I'll call on you.
Lang Gibbs.
Anybody else?
Steve Buckley.
Anybody else?
Patty Jurinsky.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, hearing none. Elaine, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Regarding my prior comments, I'm trying to figure out how we're going to get through the summer and to flatten the curve. Otherwise, we're all going to be in trouble. I guess I wasn't too clear on the lane closure, because if we have an east and west, I'm not sure, unless there's no parking, how we're going to manage having people, shops selling outdoors on the sidewalks with enough room, even if it's one-way traffic east and west, and socially distancing. If people are stopping, purchasing things, how you get around them. I'm also concerned about us doing anything before other towns do. If we open it up, I think what this is attracting is people coming in for the day to shop because perhaps other towns are closed. And I think that's a very thing that we should discourage if we want to flatten the curve. Chatham has always been known as a cloudy day town, where people come and they don't necessarily buy anything, but they just walk the streets. And I saw over Memorial Day that people were not following the mask on that strip from the Rotary to School Street. They were not wearing masks. We have to have a lot of enforcement. If we're going to do this in the summer when hundreds and hundreds of people descend on the town, and they can, there are basically tables all up and down Main Street for people shopping. And if people are not wearing masks and they're standing next to people and they've come from out of state and they have not quarantined, which we know they're not doing, we're going to have a problem. So I think it's short-sighted for us to say we need to open up the stores on Main Street to attract people coming in for the day at our expense of the full-time and summer residents. We're going to bear the consequences. They're going to come in for 2 or 3 days or a week, and then they're going to leave. And we're going to be.
So, Elaine, I think what we're trying to discuss is about creating a working group to discuss all of this.
These are the kinds of things I think they need to consider: enforcement and whether or not that is what we are looking for. Do we want to promote it or not? And that is my concern.
Okay.
So I would hope they take that into consideration.
Thank you. Next is Stephen Buckley.
Yes,
Stephen?
thank you. Yep, thank you very much.
Go ahead.
I think I agree with the idea that I think that everyone seems to agree that something needs to be done quickly, and that the sooner the better. And of course, we want to make sure that we do it in a thoughtful way and not make mistakes. But as everybody can see, the technology does allow us to quickly communicate as a group. And so the weak link actually is ourselves. It's not the technology. We can do this. And under the law, the town manager, under the open meeting law, the town manager can create a advisory group that can meet behind closed doors. But I would advise that the group be set up quickly. But there's nothing in the law that says it has to be behind closed doors. So I would suggest that something be set up quickly, but also be transparent and open so that we can take advantage of people being able to say, this is what Dennis is doing. This is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and we can move quickly because we have many minds focusing on the same problem at the same time. So that's my suggestion, that whatever we do, that it still be open so that we can make the most, we can have the wisdom of the crowd focused in the proper way, and the technology does allow us to do that. I don't think I think everybody who's been working from home and separately realizes that we can do that, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to do it. So that's my suggestion.
Thank you
very much.
Patty Jurinsky.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a couple of suggestions. I haven't heard of any discussions about local residents and the impacts that this plan would have on everyone who lives along those routes. So a couple of things that I wanted to bring up is Last year, there was significant disruption in downtown with construction, and I think the traffic was pretty noticeably backed up. And I can imagine that this would add to that type of situation again. There's also a concern about restricting the time for the traffic for local residents, for having people going by those side streets. When you restrict them to one way, that loop with people going by at all hours in their cars. So that's one thing. One thing I'm sure that's come up when you've been discussing it is looking at shuttles and having shuttling people into the downtown area, Main Street area, rather than having the traffic going through. And again, that might be linked to a time restriction. Only the shuttles only run at certain times, and you shut the roads down at certain times. Again, tied to having representation. You've talked a lot about the chamber and other people being involved, but again, I've heard no local representations for residents being part of this discussion. And this is going to be a huge disruption to the quality of life for the taxpayers along these routes. And so I just want to throw that out there, that should be considered. And then also side street parking. You know that this is a big issue with not just during the parade, which has been canceled, but just every day. All of those side streets along those routes people will be parking along there. So that has to be considered with the police, and maybe that came up with the police and the fire department as well. And again, I have not been privy to what those comments were, but side street parking restrictions all along those routes, making sure people don't take advantage of those and park on people's private lots. So anyway, just wanted to add that to the list. Thank you.
Thank you. I think when we did the Eldridge Garage Task Force, we had residents on that working group. That might be something to consider, Jill. In the Board of Selectmen might want to consider having resident representation. Dean, yes, go ahead, Dean.
Madam Chair, I think that's a good suggestion to have a resident of the downtown area on the working group. But let me just say something. It should not be a formal committee of the town, and I will withdraw my offer to participate if this becomes a regular committee with formal meetings and so forth, because I'm not interested in spending hours and hours and hours hearing from everybody and their brother. We're going to hear from that from people when the recommendation comes to the Board of Selectmen. So those are the terms on which I would agree to participate. When we did the downtown parking, that was a merchant association task force. It wasn't a town task force. I was simply a liaison to it. So
Okay.
either that or a working group set up by the town manager is acceptable to me, but nothing beyond that. Thank you.
Well, I think we are heading in the direction and decided on a working group with the town manager. And as you said, all the deliberations will be brought back to the Board of Selectmen for us to talk about in an open public. This is an efficient way to move forward with something that needs to be done quickly. We're getting bogged down here a little bit on this, and so anyway, what's our next step here, guys? Did I hear from everybody? Board of Health weighed in, public weighed in. Jill, do we need to take any more actions on this item, or am I okay?
I'm all set.
Okay. Mary, are you all set?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Shireen, I am prepared to update on the art in the park and oars in the stores, but I don't know if you want to table that or if you want me to go ahead with that. I know.
Yeah,
what do you want to do?
I'm wondering if we could do it as a public announcement, or we do have events right now, so I will allow it if we're doing a brief discussion. But are you going to be asking us for a vote tonight?
No, I was just going to update you on what we're thinking, and you could vote tonight, or you could vote at your next meeting.
Why don't I'm just thinking that maybe this is something that the task force should be discussing too, Mary, as a matter of recommendations.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'll open up it to my board to see what they have to say about that.
just so you know, what we did was we kind of just did a plan A and a plan B for the oars in the stores and the art in the park. And then Mondays on Main, we've tabled that for the summer, might be an option for the fall. And then Oktoberfest, it's too early to say anything about that.
All right. Okay. So I'm wondering though, Mary, I think I'd like to hear from the task force on what they're trying to recommend, if that's possible, okay?
Yep.
If you don't mind. All right. Okay. So we need to move on to the next agenda item. But before we do that, I forgot to ask the Park and Rec for them to vote to adjourn their meeting if they were ready. Is Meredith still on? Meredith, are you still there, waiting patiently? Okay. All right, I guess she's not there now. Is unmuted. Would they mute their mic, please? Your comments are a little unnecessary. So we're going to move on to the next item, which is state boat ramp regulations. We have some stuff in our packet. Jill, do you want to give us an update on that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to look to see who is here. I think I saw.
I know. I'm trying to see. Yeah, I'm trying to see.
So this was Dave Lykos had suggested that the board review this, and it's in your packet. I don't have much more information. This wasn't relating to anything with direct retail sales by fishermen and so forth. So this was specifically for the boat ramp regulations.
So these were Department of Health order guidelines on what we have to do to at boat ramps. Is this why he wanted to share this with us? This was from the Executive Office of Energy Environmental Affairs. Were we taking up any decisions on this or any discussion? I'm a little.
I'm not muted. Okay. I'm not so sure what was requested. The board has, or even the Board of Health has endorsed some of the regulations or guidelines. And so I think this was bringing it to your attention through the DPH guidelines and orders. And maybe it's a reminder for what is required, such as wearing masks on the boat ramps and so forth. So if there's, and this also deals with recreational boating and commercial boating. So I'm not seeing anybody else from the other departments on to speak.
Hey,
all right.
Jill, it's
Go
Bob.
ahead.
Yeah, this was brought up strictly for your information. We don't have any state boat ramps in Chatham anymore. The only one that we had at one point, and it wasn't actually a state ramp, but Riders Cove, we used state funding to do that, but that has long since expired. These are just general guidelines that the state put out for their ramps. All the rest of our ramps are under local control. And this was really just information so the public understands that, these are all things they should be doing. We are putting social distancing signs up at all of our town landings and ramps. So this was really just for educational purposes.
Oh, okay. So is this online on our website too?
I believe it is. I've got several things up on the website regarding boating.
Okay.
And if it's not up, I'll get it up tonight or tomorrow.
All right. Did the Board of Health look at this, John? Have you seen this?
No. We haven't.
Okay. Do you have any comments on this at all? Or,
I really don't. I haven't looked at it.
okay.
Shireen.
Yeah,
All right.
Shireen, I could tell you the State Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs last week, they came out with 12 or 15 different sets of these guidelines, covering everything from parks and beaches and boating and ramps and everything. A lot of it, frankly, is repetitious. It's the same thing over and over again because it applies in all these different cases. But, we can definitely get all this stuff available and share it with the various boards.
Okay. All right. So I imagine that waterways this would be something for waterways to look at too at some point, and the board. Okay. Any other thing that we need to, any of my board want to make a comment on this at all? Dean, Jeff?
Good, Shereen.
Oh, okay. Corey?
No, I'm good.
Dean?
I'm fine, thank you.
Peter?
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Then we're going to move on. Thank you. Thank you for calling that to our attention. The next order of business is the Lower Outer Cape Board of Selectmen Chair and Town Manager's discussion on a survey. This was something Jill and I have been meeting with the Elbow Up group, which is, I think, Barnstable to Provincetown, board chairs and chairmen, just sharing information and discussing some of the different approaches the towns have made on dealing with some of the matters of COVID-19. It's a meeting that we've had maybe 2 meetings. I know Jill meets with the group as town managers more regularly, but the idea was that this was an organization. This was a way for us to be able to informational share. And so one of the things that came up, and I think it's been in our discussions as well, is about short-term rentals. And there's been a bit of discussion from the organization, from the municipalities about how they feel about short-term rentals. Now, we all know, and Dean has brought this up on several occasions, about constitutional rights to housing and whether this would even be appropriate to try to make any decisions on our own as a town on short-term rentals. But the group decided to do a survey just to be able to share with the various working groups and with the Governor's Advisory Board on how perhaps we felt about short-term rentals. And the survey is pretty simple. Most of you had filled it out, but we were hoping that maybe we could get a board consensus on this to bring back in discussion. And the 2 questions that were at hand was, does our board as a whole feel that there should be a minimum stay limits placed on short-term rentals? And the question meaning hotels, motels, and B&Bs. And the question was yes or no. And the second question was, if your board feels that there should be a minimum stay limit put in place, what is the consensus on the specific number of days? 7 minimum, 14 minimum, and 28 minimum. So I was going to open it up for discussion and see if we could come up with some sort of response for the Elbow Up. It's nothing formal. It's not that we're making a decision about this. It's just building on the survey to be able to share our thoughts that might reflect some of our concerns for the summer. So I'm going to put it out there to my board for discussion. If anybody wants to go first, I'll open it right up for you guys and hear what you have to say. Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Not to put you on the spot.
I understand that they're trying to get a sense, but to me, it's a waste of time after I heard about, everything we've done with the regional group. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, everybody can hear you.
Good. All right. I remember filling this thing out 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Yes.
and I said it was too early to tell. And one of the things I mentioned, though, is if what you really need to do is control how you clean between rental times. I can't. It seems to me that to say, anything less than, what is it, 32 days, we care about that. Does it really make a difference? I just feel like we're sort of wasting our time in looking at something like this, since it's not legal. Okay, thanks.
All right. So you have no comment on that. Okay. Jean? You're muted, Dean.
Okay. I don't know if it's legal or not. I mean, I'm inclined to think there are certain things the town could do to regulate short-term rentals, perhaps even limiting by definition what it is. I would tend to rely more on the state legislature to make those types of decisions. Peter makes an interesting point about, the greater importance of making sure that the premises are cleaned properly between stays. I certainly don't think a town could ban them, and that's not being asked, but I'm inclined to have no response to either question, because I do think there are some legal considerations, and I guess I can't get beyond that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Jeff, do you have any comments on this survey?
I get nervous when I tell people how they can use their property.
Okay. How about you, Corey?
I'm okay. Unmute. No formal response. I mean, I don't think we're going to get a lot of short-term rentals this summer. I really don't, because talking to people in the industry, there's more inquiries for longer stays. 31 plus. People are renting in blocks. Splitting it up between friends and whatever. And anything short-term is just being canceled. So I don't think whether the stuff is legal or not legal. I think some of the short-term rentals just not going to happen. At least some of the traditional short-term rental, establishments are not going to get any accommodations. Hotels, motels, I don't know what's going to happen. So I think that some of this is going to self-regulate itself, but I don't have a formal position on this.
Okay, so my takeaway, because I'll be taking this back to share, is aside from those who have already filled out this survey, that there's no other response from the board at this time. Am I correct in assuming that from the group?
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then we'll table the. Jill, any comment? No. Okay. All right. So that we're off the hook on the survey.
Madam Chair, I can't resist. May I make a comment?
If you must, Peter.
This will be quick.
Okay, because it's 9:30.
We've heard from a number of sources here tonight, just a little while ago from Corey, across the Cape, that we don't expect a lot, or they haven't even been seeing a lot of short-term rentals, like a day or a few days. If that's the case, then anything we consider about what we do with any kind of ticketing, of parking limits or whatever, anything like that, especially maybe even beaches, is why would we want to consider a day, a day pass of sorts? That's my only comment.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Peter. So we're going to move on. The last is any other items to consider for phase 1 or phase 2 opening. And that was just a placeholder. And I think that we can, if the board has anything else they want to discuss tonight, we can, or we just convene, vote to adjourn. But we first have to get the Board of Health to do so too, if they're still there as well. So any other items from the board? I'm not hearing any. Okay. The Board of Health, are you ready to adjourn your meeting?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn the Board of Health from a member?
Yeah, this is Noble. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second? I'll second. Okay, I'm going to call your name and then vote whether you approve the motion to adjourn. Dr. Ward, are you on the phone? Dr. Hanson?
vote to adjourn.
Ron Broman. Are you there, Ron? Ed Sheehan. Okay. Well, I vote to adjourn. That does not give us a quorum, though, but the vote is 2 to adjourn and 0 to not adjourn. I'm not sure what I do with that, but that's the best we can do right now.
Okay. We're, as I said, John, we're a work in progress when it comes to these meetings and these joint meetings. So I appreciate that. Thank you to your board. Meredith, I was just going to check in with you one more time to see if you're on. Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn by the Board of Selectmen.
So moved, Peter.
Yep.
Peter,
Second,
second.
Jeff. Yep.
Jeff, okay.
Yep, yep.
I'll take a roll call. Corey,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you. It is 9:32. I appreciate everybody's time, and really, truly, when we get into these meetings, we never know how they're gonna go. So we're doing okay. But thank you, everybody, for your attendance tonight and for weighing in. Have a good evening, Chatham. Good night.